waste management. We have created awareness on waste management, waste of clean water and sanitation. In the areas of leadership, from 16 interventions, we have impacted 1,525,353 plus people. We are and professional development. To achieve this, the Foundation partners with organizations
organization are the indices that guarantee effectiveness. Aspire Coronation Trust ACT Foundation is a grant-making non-profit organization established in 2016 to support local, national, and regional non-profit organizations working to address challenges and associated vulnerabilities across the African continent. Our work factored from the SDGs formulated for global best practices ensure that we can affect our societies in ways that ensure a cascade of knowledge, interest, and development long after we are gone. This we are doing by fostering ownership as we drive sustainable impact within our communities. Our interests, as evidenced, span health, entrepreneurship, environment, and leadership. In channeling resources to the organizations we fund, ACT Foundation is committed to developing and strengthening them to ensure sustainability through organizational development, monitoring and evaluation, impact measurement, board governance, and support. The objective is to guarantee the delivery of effective and efficient outcomes to the beneficiaries.
When we started off, one of the things that we wanted to do was to make sure that the organizations we're working with, it was not really about just giving them money to go and resources to go and solve problems, but we wanted to partner with them as well to make sure that in the long term, we're building sustainable organizations. You can see the difference in terms of the growth of the organizations, but also in terms of the solutions to problems that the challenges the different communities are facing.
Dustbin Village, a rural and underserved area in Lagos, home to over 550,000 people. Rufina's vision was becoming a burden. She hugged the television set like her life depended on it. The classroom was not any better. But through the intervention superintended by Vision Spring and Catholic Opticals, working with ACT Foundation, Rufina now has her eyeglasses.
When she was looking at TV, she would go very close to the screen. Then I asked her some questions. Are you not seeing well? Good enough. Their teachers at school noticed this problem. I was making arrangements, trying to put up, because I know how much this glass I'm wearing, how much it cost me.
Before I got the glasses, I felt miserable, frustrated. I felt handicapped, like I was missing out in everything that the teacher was saying.
Since she got this glass, that report is no longer there.
I feel great. At least anything that the teachers they are writing on the board, or if they're making an illustration on the board. Wow, with this glass, I'm able to do better in my study.
Considering my lame pocket, when you look at this place now, you see that a man of 3 kids, that one has saved me some money, which I should have spent to procure a glass for her.
From the depths of my heart, I want to say a big thank you to Art Foundation of Visions for giving me the opportunity to be able to see the world differently.
Basically, what we said is if we can go into communities with their sponsorship and support, we can screen all Nigerians to ensure that we kick out refractive error and presbyopia. And they sponsored 7,500 glasses, and we screened about 16,000 plus Nigerians, including people in the Dustbin village.
At the end of the project, we were able to give glasses to 7,659 people, women and children.
People want us to give, beneficiaries 70,000, indirect is another number of thousands, but we do a lot of monitoring. So all the programs we've done last year, we are doing the monitoring and evaluating of the programs right now, because we want to be sure that really the effects that we claim are really happening is what is happening.
The Fitch International Evaluation Report on Economic Performance in 2016 reveals that more than 55% of the youths are either unemployed or underemployed.
The solutions in terms of getting them started on a business is sometimes so overwhelming, and we try as much as possible to find organizations that are working and creating hands-on solutions.
Entrepreneurship is one of the solutions to reducing poverty, as it is a medium to improve the quality of life for individuals, families and communities, and also sustain a healthy economy and environment. During this period, 84 female entrepreneurs in Lagos State and 2,000 secondary school students in Ogun and Oyo states have gone through a rigorous entrepreneurial training. Olatunji Olamilekan is a young man who is redirecting his vision. He grew up in the Olaleye community. It's another rural and underserved area of Lagos State. Raised alongside his younger sisters, Olatunji's mother took ill in 1999 and later died.
The promise I made to my mom, I just have to keep going. And the only thing that always kept me back to the track then is this education of the thing, like, this is my agreement with my mom. That was a dying wish.
Olatunji surmounted serious hardships, but still found himself at the crossroad of unemployment.
So now I actually went to the school and nothing is still happening. So, you know, that was what actually kept me moving ever since. That was that one goal that actually went there. Now I've obtained the goals, then what else?
With some of his friends dead or unaccounted for, he needed to toe the straight and narrow, and the vocational skill acquisition project of Freedom Foundation, supported by ACT Foundation, presented the needed opportunity.
I saw them pass by in the, like a rally, so they give me a flyer, and I read the flyer and I say like, okay, skill acquisition stuff, and I had to call one of them and say, please come. Are you sure this is free? And they say, yeah, of course it is. Like, we're not paying for it.
I see him as someone who will grow in it. I see him as someone that is patient, someone that has focus. So that's why I decided to retain him, but it's going to be useful for me.
Many interesting stories from people who were orphans, people who didn't have any means of livelihood, and they've been able to be empowered through this program. And some of them have gone on to start their own businesses, and some of them are, now working and they're earning a living.
We're teaching hands-on enterprise, but also in terms of capacity building. So if you start a business, you can actually take it to the next level.
Through ACT Foundation's entrepreneurship intervention, 438 youths have received skills acquisition training, business management training for 60 budding entrepreneurs, employability training for 293 out-of-school youths in Yaba local government area, Lagos State. Henry Anumudo was a communication and media liaison officer at a media organization in the capital city of Abuja. Henry left his media career and applied for the Teach for Nigeria Fellowship in 2017.
I saw firsthand the crisis of education in Nigeria, and I was personally challenged to come into the system and try to see what good I can do.
After going through a 6-week training, where he learned teaching techniques and aids which would ensure children got maximum benefits from classroom learning, Henry was posted to Ebenezer Primary School in Abeokuta, where he teaches primary 5 pupils.
Being in the classroom has given me certain skills that are important for leadership: listening, patience, communication, being able to work under certain kind of pressures, to be able to also, with my co-teachers, being able to create a working relationship with them. It's important because it can define your impact on the pupils. And that has also made me to be able to work with others.
It was the one that made us to have press club in the school, which we have started today, and I was impressed during the assembly. We coordinated it, we explained, and the pupils per se, they are the one that read the news.
The Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, said that we should not use plastic bags, but we should use paper bags to manage our waste.
The best definition for me for leadership is the person who decides or does the right thing at the right time. If you have that kind of person in such a system, whatever the inequity is or the challenge is, they will definitely solve that problem. So the best way we have thought about addressing or meeting our vision someday is placing the right leaders in the classroom. And that's the summary of what the whole fellowship is all about.
What you see that they've done, you can't really talk about the solutions for the next few years. It's very long term. But they were also using the younger generation to go back into the schools to do something that changes the life and the value system of the kids.
Doyisola Ogunye is a thoroughbred professional. As CEO of Medic, she is the driving force behind the Kids for Clean Seas initiative to schools in the Etiosa local government area axis.
We started the Kids for Clean Seas because we decided to take it back to the grassroots and to the children. We took the project Kids for Clean Seas to 16 schools across Etiosa, and we're letting them know that if you clean your environment, your immediate environment, you're actually making the oceans cleaner, because every litter that is dropped on the floor usually gets into the canals, and from the canals it finds its way to the waterways, and from the waterways it gets into the ocean. What happens after that is the fish we eat this plastic and gets into our own digestive system and into our bloodstream as well, causing a lot of illnesses that we don't even know about yet. So the most important thing is to nip it in the bud and let the children understand the importance of recycling, the importance of keeping their environment clean, and overall the importance of saving the planet from plastic pollution. At age 10, he's ready to start gathering children together to talk to them about what he has learned. He's ready all the time to lend a helping hand to what we're doing on the beach, in schools, and even at home. And I believe that in the next 10 years, Israel will definitely be a force to reckon with when it comes to taking care of the environment.
I started picking these PET bottles when I saw my sister picking it all around places, and I said, let me join. I'll be telling my friends that if they have any bottle that they want to throw away, and they should recycle it.
It was disturbing me. Mommy, I want to go with my sisters. I want to go.
Through the program, the school was given an award, and I myself, I have to. When your environment is clean, you will live more comfortably.
Some women are now able to sustain themselves through avenues created by this initiative. Kids have also imbibed a positive attitude towards the environment and will take this with them into the future. Through our grantees, ACT Foundation was able to reach 18 communities, 18,000 people, and 26 public schools. In addition, 45 trees were planted and 34,450 recyclables generated.
My son had come back from school once and he started explaining, we had to recycle, you can't use this to cook, you can't do this anymore. And I was just like, gosh, because it changes your habits, what you are used to doing for the last 20, 30 years.
ACT Foundation is grateful to our partners and sponsors for trusting us.
Without Access Bank, and especially Mr. Herbert Wigwe, we won't be where we are. The backing they give you is second to none. And then of course, we also allowing us to do what we know how to do. Gives you a spirit to soar. Africa is the melting point for us. The story of Africa is also always told in a very negative way. And as an indigenous grant-making organization, we want people to also understand that we can be a solution to the problems that we are facing. We, as Africans, have to change and solve the problems that we have.
Hello, everyone. Good morning and welcome to today's Sector Insights. My name is Abiodun Owo and I'm going to be your host for today. Welcome, welcome. It's really good to have you all around. Thank you for joining us for this extremely important edition of Sector Insights. You please say good morning. Say good morning. Tell us where you're joining us from. It'll be nice to know. Thank you. Where are you joining us from? Please tell us. Good morning, good morning. Where are you joining us from? Okay, so you can introduce yourself in the chat box and tell us where you're joining us from. Okay, I see a couple of people raising their hands. You could please use the chat box for now. Let's use the chat box. Let's have our names, our organization, and where you are joining us from. Okay, so if you can see the features on your screen, you see the Q&A, you see polls, you see chats. That is the feature we should be using now. The Q&A session is solely for questions after our presentations. Okay, someone says that chat is disabled. All right, I'll get to it. Okay. Sorry about that. Someone is trying to fix it. So we will enable the chat room now so that you can send in the chats. Okay, Janice Akobaro, thank you for joining us from Enactus, Nigeria. You're welcome. Okay, the chat is disabled. It will be enabled soon. Please give us a few minutes. Okay, I'm told the chat box has been enabled, so we get to use it now. Thank you very much. Please introduce yourself. Yes, so I got a yes already. Thank you. Good morning, Kingsley from NBCC. We are so glad to have you here. Thank you for coming. Okay, you're welcome. I see Salt Essien, Sheyi Sanjo Bankole, Doris Ugochukwu, Ekundaya Samuel, Ejirogene Kajo. You're welcome. Doris Ugochukwu, thank you very much. Olamide Akinyalabi, thank you very much for coming. I see people from Whisker, from the International Award for Young People. You are welcome. Yes, thank you for adding what part of the continent you're calling in from. Yes, I see people from Nigeria. Nigeria so far. You're welcome, Diwa. You're welcome. Good to have you here. Chileans Initiative for Skills Empowerment. You're welcome. Fund Foundation, we're glad to have you here. Okay, without taking much of your time, you could please just state in the chat box, what do you expect to get from this conversation today? So today we are all about regulations in the non-profit sector. What is it that you would like to take from this session? Please go ahead and tell us. I'm waiting. What would you like to take away from this meeting today? We're all about regulations in the nonprofit sector today. We're looking at incorporation, we're looking at taxes and other policies and so on and so forth. So what is it that you expect to take away from this meeting today? Please use the chat box. Salt Essence says, I want to know all that I need to know to keep our foundation on the right side of the law. Okay, that's great. I can assure you that one of our sessions is going to address that. How to be on the right side of the law. You don't want to be on the other side. Okay, she says, I want to know more about CAC requirements of NGOs per year. Yes, okay. We will attempt to address that. Franklin would like to know tax compliance and other things. Okay, some other people would like to learn about frameworks for nonprofits. Okay, I can tell you that we are in good hands and we'll be learning this and more. Okay, so quickly, I'll just take us through ground rules, something to guide us as we meet. If you want to ask questions, use the Q&A feature in on your screen. At different times in the meeting, we'll put up polls. Please ensure that you complete them. It's to give us more information about you and to also help us get better at what we do. And so that we can concentrate and get value from here, we want to encourage that we do not multitask. We try and participate fully. Okay. So to formally welcome us, I'm going to call on our administrative executive, Afeburo Buamu. Over to you, Afe.
Thank you, Abiodun. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for taking out time. Foundation is to facilitate learning and growth in the social sector, which is why this training has been put together. Today, we'll be looking at regulations in the nonprofit sector. For organizations to be sustainable, you have to be aware of the guidelines within the space. We have brought seasoned professionals to guide us on this subject. I am very hopeful you will find value in this training and take a few lessons from here to manage your organizations better. As we all know, ACT Foundation is turning 5 this year, so we'll be celebrating 5 years of social impact. Kindly participate and provide as much feedback as possible. Thank you once again and have a productive session. Over to you, Abiodun.
All right, okay. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to be telling us about ACT Foundation. We are Aspire Coronation Trust Foundation, and we're a grant-making organization created to support non-profit organizations, social entrepreneurs who are working to address challenges and associated vulnerabilities across our continent. We were established in 2016, and then we started operation in 2017. And that's why Afe mentioned that we're turning 5 this year. So at ACT Foundation, our end goal, our big picture is to create effective social impact solutions in our continent. And that is why our vision is to leverage relationships to create effective social impact solutions across Africa. And how do we do that? We do that by building sustainable societies, by engaging initiatives. So we work with different nonprofits across Africa who actually do address the vulnerabilities that they have seen in their communities. So at ACT Foundation, we have 4 focus areas. We know that the challenges we face in Africa, they are limitless, they are unlimited. However, we have started from somewhere. So we have 4 major focus areas where we work, which we address. The first one is in health. And in health, we work on malaria, cancer, that is breast cancer, cervical and prostate cancer. And then we also do work on maternal and child health. Our other focus area is in entrepreneurship. We also do work in environment and in leadership. You can visit our website to get more information about our work. And the work that we do at ACT Foundation is to address our sustainable development goals, which was put together by different nations of the world for us to see that yes, the globe actually does develop. And at ACT Foundation, we do our best to address most of these sustainable goals, all in the spirit of creating social impact solutions in Africa. Okay, so I'll quickly take you through the activities that we carry out at ACT Foundation. And our major is fund management. So what we do is provide grants to nonprofits who have gone through rigorous selection process. You'll find out more as we go on. We usually open our grant cycle sometime in the last quarter of the year. I will be providing more information about that. We also have the Changemakers Innovations Challenge, which is a special project, if I could say, that focuses on change makers, on individuals, on social entrepreneurs, non-profit leaders who are actually making differences in their communities using technology. So, and apart from that, we do other things such as co-funding. We partner with other grant makers to provide funding to organizations, nonprofits and social enterprises, to be specific. Our other activities are capacity strengthening program, one of which is this one, which you're attending, the Sector Insight, which is one of our social sector knowledge series. We also have a professional volunteer program. This one is specifically for our pool of grantees, because we do not just provide grants and then turn our backs and expect magic to happen. So what we do is assign our grantees to professionals in our sector. They're in different sectors, IT, and what have you. So we get professionals from different organizations who are willing to give man-hours, who are willing to give their time to the development of non-profit leaders, to the development of social enterprises. So they take on different topics, from policies to advocacy to the use of technology and what have you. Apart from this, we also have our annual conference, which is our signature conference, the Breakfast Dialogue. It'll be coming up sometime in September this year, and we urge you to join us. You will be getting our invitation if you're in our database. And if you're not, now that you're here, we're going to add you to our invitation lists. And lastly, we also have our podcast, which we started early this year, and the aim of that podcast is, of course, to also add another channel of increasing knowledge, increasing capacity in the non-profit sector. And lastly, we have our research and advocacy, where we touch on different issues that are important in the social sector. We've done things in cancer, we've done things on the use of technology, and so on and so forth. If you visit our website, you will get further information about this. So ACT Foundation, we're 5 years, and somehow, because of the way that we've been partnering with people, partnering with non-profit leaders, partnering with social entrepreneurs, innovators in Africa, we have been able to reach 2.2 million people, and we're still reaching more people. This we've been able to do with 81 non-profit organizations, and we have touched over 800 African communities. We are present in all of the states in Nigeria, and we have been going to touching on other African countries, and we hope to keep spreading as we do this. Okay, yeah, so Afe mentioned that we're 5 this year, so at our annual conference this year, we're also going to be celebrating 5 years of our social impact. There will be activities leading to that, and of course afterwards, and you can participate as much as you can. So this is showing us our different partners that we have worked with in the past. And you can connect with us on Instagram at ACT Foundation _. On YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn, we are Aspire Coronation Trust Foundation. And of course, our website is www.acttrustfoundation, I beg your pardon, acttrustfoundation.org. Okay, so enough about ACT Foundation. We need to get into exactly why we're here today. And to do that, I'll be introducing our first facilitator, a seasoned professional, I must say. His name is Oluseyi Oyebisi. He's Executive Director of Nigerian Network of Non-Governmental Organizations. He's got about 2 decades of experience in the civil society, and he has worked both nationally, serving the social sector, both nationally and internationally. He's been a global coordinator with UNICEF. He's also worked with the Community of Democracy, amongst other organizations. Please welcome with me, Mr. Oluseyi Oyebisi.
Yes, can I check that you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yes, and it's good to have, to be welcomed by the Executive Director. Thank you, Osai. Thanks for the opportunity to be able to speak to colleagues this morning, and thanks a lot, Abiodun. Thanks to the 82 colleagues that are also on the call. So the conversation today will center around what can we do better as nonprofits. But before I dive into my conversation, I would like to situate the need for us to have some of these structures in place, and also why regulation helps us to do them more better. I'm not sure whether the secretary can help share my screen, or I can share directly from here.
Yes, you can share. You can share your screen. Right. But if you'd like me to, I can do that.
Okay, I'm doing that right away. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, right, okay. So, but again, it's important to start with some definitions. Why am I starting with definition this time? Just last week, I was in a meeting at the national with some colleagues at the National Assembly and the clerks of the National Assembly. We're discussing, and conversations around definitions came up. And you can't actually legislate what you can't define. So I'll start with that definition, then snowball into some of the other issues I'd like us to pay attention to, both informally and also formally. Now, in terms of definitions, when you want to define the non-profit sector, it's very difficult. It's very difficult because there are a lot of institutions and organizations that made up that sector. And also when you want to define non-governmental organizations itself. So we don't have a defined or a standard definition for these institutions or even civil society. But in my work, I have found the definitions used by the Council of Europe very useful, and also the one by Howard L. Olek on non-profit organizations very useful to the kind of work that I do at the Nigerian Network of NGOs. So the Council of Europe defines non-governmental organization as voluntary self-governing bodies or organizations established to pursue the essentially non-profit making objectives of their founders or members, and do not include political parties. So when you are defining non-governmental organizations, the Council of Europe is saying that they are voluntary self-governing bodies or organizations. They are established to pursue the essentially non-profit making objectives of their founders. Note the word founders, or members, and also note the word members, because that would help us to situate the conversation today, and do not include political parties. Now, when you look at how Howard L. Olek has defined non-profit organizations, it says they are those that are not intended to and do not produce monetary gain for their members or managers, except as reasonable salaries paid for services as employees, actually rendered to the organizations. Again, when you look at his own definition of non-profit organizations, they are not intended and do not produce monetary gain for their members or managers, except as reasonable salaries paid for services as employees, actually rendered to the organizations. Now, these two definitions helps me to be able to situate the conversations and the trend that I've seen in terms of how people have formed nonprofits in Nigeria. So someone just woke up one day and decided to say, God has blessed me. I want to help the less privileged. And that person is doing it on his or her own. Then maybe for within 2-3 years, a couple of friends come and say, this thing you're doing, why not register it? I'm sure you're familiar with those kind of narratives. Or God just spoke to me and said, this is what you should do. Oh yeah, I just feel I should help. I don't know how to help. And I was talking and someone said, start a nonprofit. So we all start nonprofits because we want to help. And we weren't forced, we weren't coerced, all right? So we woke up and said, okay, this is what I want to do. Then sometimes some of us will start considering registering it so that we can be able to access donor funding, all right? That is fine. But within your right as a citizen of Nigeria, and it's a global practice, you are allowed to help people without registering with government, and you will not be penalized for that. Now, you can also decide to register. And why am I situating this? is so that we begin to now start thinking, because I've heard a lot of people say, yeah, I'm using my own money. Nobody has given, why are you asking me to submit how much I've spent? Why are you asking me to file anything? We'll situate that within this definition and also the essential characters of a non-profit. But we'll get to that in a minute. So you would hear people say, why that?
Embassy?
Yes.
Sorry to break your presentation. Could you please put it in full screen so that people can follow? Thank you very much.
All right. Is it in full screen now?
Not yet. You can click the slideshow.
Okay, now we have it.
Now it is. Thank you.
All right. So looking at that now, we have to then decide whether we want to register or we do not want to register. But notice that if you decide to register, there are incentives for you to register. So nobody is forcing you to register, but something will incentivize that your voluntary willingness to help. And that is ability to access donor funding, ability to have that tax exempt status, and also the ability to be able to open a bank account, including ability to be able to sue in your organization's name and to enter a contract in your organization's name. Now, these are 4 or 5 incentives for you to register. Now, what does that mean? When you now decide to register, it means that you have decided to follow the law, even though under the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and your freedom of association is guaranteed to be able to do all of these things without registry. Now, let's park that on the side, having situated the conversation that you can register or not register. However you decided or however you jumped into the sector, whether it was God that called you or you were just doing your own thing and friends advised you to start a nonprofit, or you just feel this is what I want to do, I like it, and you started a nonprofit, all is fine. Now let's look at globally what the essential character of a nonprofit looks like. And when I say globally, this is what defines a nonprofit, or interchangeably, this is what defines civil society, right? Now, it has to be voluntary. And that's why, as Nigerian Network of NGOs, a membership-based organization, I cannot penalize or force people to join Nigerian Network of NGOs. Neither can you force people to join your organization, because again, when you go back to that definition, it's voluntary self-governing and it wants to follow the objectives of the founders. All right, so voluntarily, you just woke up someday and said, this is what you do. So it's a matter of choice for you as a founder and for those belonging to your organization. Nobody can be forced, all right? Now, the second, in terms of the character, is the self-governing nature. And that's why when you see some organizations saying non-profit independent, it means that it is not under the direction of public authorities, no government involvement. And that's why when some organizations are doing due diligence for you, they would ask you, do you have any government official on your board, or what's the level of government interference in your activities? So it has to be self-governing. Now, there is the non-profit nature of this in terms of the character, no profit. So your principal objective is not to generate profits from the activities that you are undertaking. It is for you to do good, to help people, not to make money for either the founder or the members, but it is for you to be able to achieve your objectives without making any profit. Now, these 3 characters are essential, all right, for anyone thinking or anyone operating or running a nonprofit at this time. Recall that we've started with the fact that you can either register or not register. Again, your choice of registering is voluntary, based on the fact that there are some incentives that has been attached to you registering. And those incentives are allowed as a global best practice. So under the freedom of association and assembly interpretation, the UN Special Rapporteur did explain that government can decide to open a registration system for non-profit organizations and attach incentives to that. And that's what you see all over the world, where, you know, if you want to run as a non-profit that is registered, then these 5 incentives are what drives those kind of registrations globally. Now, we are situating the conversation from your interest, start a non-profit or you are running one, and also helping you to see the character. Now, let's go to the self-governing, because the self-governing is the most important. All of the 3 are important, but the self-governing helps us to show whether you are voluntary or you are for no profit. Again, I am speaking to those that have decided to register and those that have said we will not register. So whether you register or not, these 3 characters, all right, are important for you as a non-profit. Now, what does governance mean? Because when they say self-governing, it means that you have your own governance, all right? So what does governance mean? Again, governance is defined by so many organizations and institutions and individuals and scholars. But again, I like that of African Family Association based in Kenya. And they have defined governance as something concerned with processes. Note the word processes, note the word policies, procedures, systems, and practices, both formal and informal, the manner in which they are applied and followed, the relationships that these processes create or determine, and the nature of these relationships. So pay attention to processes, policies, procedures, systems, and practices, both formal and what? And informal. All right. So the formal and informal speaks to whether you have registered or you have decided not to register. Your self-governing system has to do with processes, policies, procedures, systems, and practices. All right. Let's look at the family unit. I mean, if you've given someone money, say 1,000 naira, to say, go and buy me ABC, and that thing is 300 naira. When the person comes back, you're expecting 2 things: what you have sent them to buy, and also your change. If they have not given you what your change, you begin to say, look at this boy or this girl. I have sent them on an errand and they have refused to give me my change. Okay, I'll keep quiet, but next time I know what to do. All right. So we're all interested in when someone asks you to do something, you want a report back. Okay. And note that what we enjoy as non-profits is public trust. People giving us money and believing in us that we will use that money for whatever we have agreed to use it for, or whatever we have promised them that we will use it for. So again, whether we've registered or we have not registered, accountability is on us. Again, within the character of a nonprofit, governance, that self-governance nature is on us. And that then means that we have processes, policies, procedures, systems, and practices in place that can help us to apply our relationships, all right, to create or determine the nature of relationships that we would have. And relationships matters a lot in nonprofit because, you know, we rely on relationship with our donors, relationship with our beneficiaries, relationship with government, relationship with everyone that we've come across with in ways that helps us to deliver on our vision, mission, and also our objectives. Now, I also like the way the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development they've also defined governance. They're saying that governance involves a set of relationships. You see the two, they are using the word relationships, right? Between an organization's management, its board, and other stakeholders. Governance also provides the structure through which the objectives of the organization are set, and the means of attaining these objectives and monitoring performance are determined. So remember that when we were defining non-governmental organization, we talked about the self-governing nature, the voluntary, and the objectives of the founder, all right? If we connect this to the OECD definition, then we're now looking at what relationship would exist between management, the board, and other stakeholders, and also how does governance provide that structure through which the objective of the founder is set and the means of attaining the objective of the founder, including monitoring and monitoring performance, are determined. So these two definitions help us to have a sense of those character, that one character within the three that I mentioned. Recall I said voluntary, it must be voluntary, it must be self-governing, and there has to be no profit. All right. So the self-governing, all right, is what led us to the definition of what governance looks like. All right. So simplifying the definition of governance, I've always said governance is the relationship between management, board, and stakeholders. All right. Now, in any relationship, trust is important. In any relationship, communication is important. In any relationship, when money starts coming in, then we must be able to account for that money. In any relationship, we must know where we are going and how we're going to get there, what roles for each one of us. Again, note that whether you register with government or not, that self-governing nature is a character that we must all abide with, provided we have remained non-profit or non-governmental, or that we have set up an organization that we have decided that we are not going to make profit, we'll just do good and do good and do good. Now, this takes me to the next slide, looking at what exactly does, governance mean. So we'll look at accountability, we'll look at fairness, we'll look at transparency, we'll look at responsibility. And in this sense, we're beginning to look at how corporate governance, board leadership has been defined by the International Finance Corporation within the World Bank Group. All right, so when you talk about governance, this is what the World Bank Group is looking at. Now, this is not huge because we've just talked about what relationship mean to all of us. I want you to be open with me. I want you to tell me the truth. I want you to be accountable to me. So that's why accountability is important, all right? And I want you to be fair in all your dealings. I want you to treat me well. I don't want you to treat me as an outcast. I want to be carried out. I want you to be fair, all right? And that's why fairness, again, comes into the conversation around when we say corporate governance or we say self-governing or we talk about governance, these are the metrics we're looking to measure what governance looks like. There's the transparency bit around governance as well. Open leadership, timely, accurate disclosure on your financial situation, and also responsibility. You are responsible to your stakeholders, you respect their rights, you ensure effectiveness and efficiency in the use of resources and in getting results, all right? So this is what we're looking at. Whether you register or not, this is what we are looking at. So the conversation that I am spending my money, why do you have to ask me for accountability, doesn't hold waters. Because even if I'm your friend and you have not registered and you've come to me to say, help me or support us to do ABC, then I want to see what you've done in the past. I want to see how you have even spent your own money, whether you are accountable in that process, and then use that to judge whether you're someone I can give money to and you'll use it for what you have said you'll use it for. Now, you have decided that for you, this ACT Foundation money, we want to get it. We would apply for ACT Foundation grants as an example, and that, we want to help people in our community. For you to be able to apply for ACT Foundation grant, you have to go through, like Abiodun said, a rigorous process, right? And that rigorous process would also involve or include you registering or having a form of registration. That registration helps to guarantee that investment in you. What it means is that if you default, all right, after everything we've done to reconcile and you're still not getting, we can sue you. All right, so it's a guarantee for that investment and it's a guarantee for public trust that, we've given someone XYZ this money and this money is used the way it should be used, because some people also gave them the money and they are expecting a report back, just like that example I gave about you sending someone on an errand, giving them 1,000 naira, and asking them to buy something that costs 300 naira. You're expecting two things, that product and also the change, right? And it is within this context that we now have to start thinking. But I've situated that whether or not you register, you are expected to govern yourself and govern yourself appropriately. And I've established that accountability is expected within the metrics for measuring that self-governance. We've talked about transparency. We've talked about being fair. We've talked about also being responsible. Now, I will now speak directly to those that have decided we will register. In Nigeria today, and I've also mentioned while I was talking that incentives to register requires you being a legal entity, ability to sue in your name and be sued, ability to open a bank account, your tax exemption status, which I'll speak to when I'm talking about the Federal Inland Revenue Service, and also ability to access donor funding, amongst other things. The credibility it puts on you, and also your ability to also be able to claim that you're registered with government. Now, the entry point for you as someone wanting to register or form as an incorporated organization is the Corporate Affairs Commission. And all over the world, we have institutions like the Corporate Affairs Commission that helps you to be able to register and start that process of being a nonprofit. Now, you can either register as an incorporated trustee, a company limited by guarantee, which would be what you call social enterprise, trade unions, charitable trusts, unincorporated associations are not registered under CAC. Unincorporated associations are organizations that have decided not to register or incorporate. Now, why have I put unincorporated associations here? Because we now need to start having some big sector conversations around unincorporated associations. When you link this to this recent CBN directive, which we've not been able to confirm whether CBN truly gave banks that directive, but that associations that are not registered with CAC, their accounts should be blocked and funds withdrawn. All right, we have written to CBN, we're expecting a response, but in other climes, unincorporated associations have some regulations that guide their work, but we don't have that at the moment in Nigeria, and it is our reality. So if you are thinking of registering, you either come in as an incorporated trustee or a company limited by guarantee, which would be what we call a social enterprise. A social enterprise, layman's definition is you're using business ideas to solve social issues, but you're also applying back that money for the objective of your organization. You're still a non-profit, but you're using business ideas. So for you, you go, you do business, but you plow the money back in a layman's definition. And it's an area that, needs more of our energies as non-profits, and maybe would be the future of our sector in terms of thinking through our sustainability. But my conversation here today is to say that you can either register as an incorporated trustees or company limited by guarantee. And under these two, you are guided by the famous Companies and Allied Matters Act 2020. Of course, there are a lot of conversations around the renewal for that. Yes, we're also sitting with the National Assembly to reform those bits, and we'll have some conversations when it's time for that. Now, within that law, Part F provides information and guidance on what the law expects to happen. And it starts with your self-governing, and it starts with your voluntary nature. And that's where it says, where 2 or 3 people have decided to form an association. All right. So it's not that we are forced to, you have decided to come together to form an association. That's the introduction, that section, it's something, the first bit that you'll see there. Then it then goes ahead to tell you what your self-governing nature would be guided by. That's where it talks about you having a board and how your board will be constituted, your constitution, and every other document, every other text that goes into your constitution and all of those bits. The law also provides for that, because the self-governing means that you have written your own constitution. This is how we would work. This is how we would run. And in that constitution, it is also expected that you would think through how you would dissolve yourselves if you need to dissolve. And we'll talk about that in this conversation as well. So the law provides information for how you register and also information on your obligations to government when you decide to register, whether you are using your own money or not. Now, the three major obligations that I would quickly run through are those around your biannual statement of affairs. Note the word biannual statement of affairs. It says you must submit your income and liabilities twice in a year. So January to June, you are expected to prepare your income and liabilities and submit that by July 15. So let's take 2022 as an example. January to June, you prepare that, what you received within that period and your liabilities within that period. And by July 15, you submit that to the Corporate Affairs Commission. Again, when you take it back to the self-governing, and one of the metrics of governance being accountability, it means that within your system, you must have a finance team that can help you prepare your income and also your liabilities, all right? And that by July 15, you must submit that. Now, the next phase is from July to December. You must also prepare your income and expenditure and liabilities. And by January 15, 2023, you submit that to the Corporate Affairs Commission. And that after you have spent January to December, everything is done. And we are saying, hallelujah, we've done well for this year. By July 23 of next year, you must submit what is called an annual returns. That annual returns will then be a form that you have downloaded. I've forgotten the name of the title of the form O something. You've completed that, and you are submitting that along with your externally audited account, which we call external audits, meaning someone that is different from your finance team, a chartered accountant recognized by the Financial Reporting Council, has come into your office to look at your books and submit. Why is this needed? This is needed, again, to guarantee that you have registered as a non-profit and that you are not doing business, because this is important for the Federal Inland Revenue Service. And I'll go to that. And because, again, your no-profit or non-profit status has to be established and confirmed annually. Okay, so that is why you are getting into that terrain of the annual returns. Annual returns are submitted by everybody globally, all right? Because that is how government can confirm that non-profit status. And how does this concern the Federal Inland Revenue Service? You know, the Federal Inland Revenue Service, by their name, they are meant to get revenue for government, all right? And revenues that they are collecting, they are in form of taxes. That's their own role. Now, the moment you trigger a registration with the Corporate Affairs Commission to seal your non-profit status, you must talk to the Federal Inland Revenue Service, because they are the ones that can tell you you are non-profit truly. So that means you need a registration with the Federal Inland Revenue Service, all right? And that way, we can now say yes, because by the law, the moment you register with CAC, you are ecclesiastical in nature. The law recognizes you immediately. Registering with the Federal Inland Revenue Service helps you to confirm that. And this is guided by the Companies Income Tax Act. Once you register with CAC, we have said you are registered under PATEF, which says you don't have to pay taxes. Then let us know you. That is what Federal Inland Revenue Service is saying, so that we can actually now confirm that you are actually a non-profit. Now, how would we know that you are a non-profit? It means that, one, you're not doing business, all right? And we are exempting whatever money comes to your organization from any tax. So, you know, companies will pay all of these tax in this world, but as a non-profit, we're exempting you from that. What does that mean? it means that government is already losing money from your activities, all right? And you must be able to account for those monies or those taxes that government is losing from your activities. That is why you must file an annual returns with government. But there are two tax obligations that you have as a non-profit. You would pay VAT. Before now, non-profits do not pay VAT, but according to the Finance Act 2020, there are some goods that are now exempt from VAT. All right, so I would ask that you please pay attention to the Finance Act 2019 and 2020. But we are meant to pay VAT, and we are meant to pay as you earn. So pay as you earn is a personal income tax. If you pay salaries to your staff, then you have to pay as you earn. I've forgotten to have the withholding tax also here. Withholding tax, if you have consultants, you either charge 5% for them if they're individuals and 10% for them if they are companies. All right, VAT is 7.5% on goods where you need to, and we pay those VATs whether at hotels or whether we're buying goods and services, those VATs are already charged. But if we are also selling goods, we must also put VAT on those and charge that for government. Now, the payee government, the law recognizes you as a tax collector in behalf of government, meaning that when you pay your staff, the payee is done by calculation. So you must go to your IRS office at your state level. They give you the computation for how to deduct the payee. So once you deduct the payee, the law recognizes you as a tax collector, that you have collected the tax in our behalf, you must remit it. And this is where the conversations around having a tax identification number comes in, so that this can be linked to your organization and also to your staff members that are also paying that tax. And you are also required to send to FIRS every month what is called your VAT report. So it would usually be nil since you are not selling anything, but they expect that if you have sold anything, you remit the VAT within a stipulated period, within the month, all right? Now, that is situating the Federal Inland Revenue Service. And you must also file your annual returns with the Federal Inland Revenue Service, including your audit report. And again, these audit reports, both laws provides information on for how many years you must keep them. I think for CSC is 5 years. I think for Federal Inland Revenue Service, you must keep all of your documents intact since when that up until when you would say you are no longer doing. That is what the Federal Inland Revenue wants to see. Now, we have situated the need for you to register, the need for you to confirm your tax exemption or your exemption status or your non-profit status with FIRS. The next is to now talk about money laundering and countering of terrorism financing, all right, which is a global epidemic, all right? And from T11, governments have come together to say, how do we fight this issue and, really ensure that we address it? So there are laws and recommendations that guides the AML CFT process. We call them the Financial Action Task Force recommendations. They are 40 in number, but number 8 and 25 concerns non-profits. Number 8 talks about non-profits being able to show that, they are not following terrorism financing, and there has to be laws guiding that. And that 25 is know your customer, all right? KYC for your donors, know your donors, know who are the people giving you money, and be able to provide information on that. Now, before you can open a bank account in Nigeria today, you must have a SCOMO certificate, even though there are challenges with the certificates, but these are the push and pull driving some of these conversations. So before now, there are cash transaction reports that you must send to SCOMO on a monthly basis. If you have received cash to the tune of $1,000 equivalent, or that you have received bank transfers up to $10,000. But because the law has been reformed and we've advocated for this to say non-profits should not be designated financial institutions, based on the work that we have done globally with FATF, triple engine and spaces for change. We understand those dynamics, and we have engaged with SCUMO on that. And we were glad that in the 2022 version of the law, non-profits were taken off as designated non-financial institutions. What that means is that the cash transaction report, we no longer need to submit them. However, we are waiting for a directive from the minister, who has the powers to issue directives on how best we would comply with the MLCFT. But from what we know in terms of best practices, the moment you're not a designated non-financial institution, you don't have to send in those reports. So whether there will now be an annual report that goes to SCUMO, we would wait for how the minister and SCUMO would interpret that directive. And in that new law, SCUMO also now has an establishment clause, which gives them their own autonomy and independence. Now, so from corporate affairs to Federal Inland Revenue Service to SCUMO, these three are the major ones. But again, there are now conversations on pensions for our staff. And this is where the PENCOM law comes into play. Because if you have a threshold, I think it's a threshold of if you have 5 staff members, then you must ensure that you comply with the pensions law. We are having conversations with PENCOM because of the peculiarity of our sector. Looking at, when you have grants today, you are able to recruit, tomorrow you are not able to recruit, and all of that. We need to discuss with PENCOM on how best our sector can fall into this umbrella and comply effectively, knowing fully well that our sector also runs on volunteers a lot. All right, so that clause on a threshold, we need to discuss that with PENCOM. But that is also important because our sector now needs to start attracting the right set of talents. And when you want to attract the right set of talents, pensions are benefits, all right? That someone would say, okay, they have pensions, okay, maybe I should work here and all of that. We need to start thinking in that regard. And that's why I like that PENCOM is flagging its rules for the sector as well. And we need to start thinking in terms of the growth of our sector. And if we truly want a sector that is able to deliver on a national scale or national development. The insurance laws are also there. The National Social Insurance Trust, the National Housing Fund, the National Health Fund as well, all right? These also are areas where we also need some further clarity, again, based on the peculiarities of our sector. But why have I put them there? Is because I am looking forward to a day when in the nonprofit sector, whether we're making use of volunteers or we are having employees and we are paying their salaries based on that definition we started with, then they are able to earn decently and also stay in the sector and use their innovations to grow our sector. Otherwise, our sector can't be running the way it is running. And that's why I am saying, yeah, this PENCOM makes a huge sense for staff benefits. Insurance makes a huge sense for staff benefits, and we should now start thinking around those. But if you want to be a cooperative, then that happens under the law of the Nigerian Cooperative Societies Act 2004, and that is usually done at the state level. So I don't know how much time I have, but this is what forming and registering a nonprofit looks like. All of these laws concerns both old nonprofits that have started some 30 years ago, like Nigerian Network of NGOs, and the new ones that will be formed today. So it's the law that guides all of us at the moment. And I would encourage us to please pay attention to these laws because they are very important as long as you have decided to register. There are more laws, all right? You read our Civil Society Regulatory Frameworks in Nigeria report, which is at this link, and I'll try and copy it out at some point. You would find about 54 laws that guide the operations of nonprofits in the country. And these laws, we have provided some reasonable thinking around those, but also some of these laws would need a lot of reforms. We acknowledge that they will need reforms, but they are laws that we do think can help grow our sector if we decide to make use of them. And I'll cite an example. While I was in France in May, the African Civil Society Day, I had the privilege of closing the conference itself, and I was the keynote speaker. And I alluded to the fact that today, someone that works in the high NGO, all right, would have decent allowances and decent ways of being treated. And myself that works in a local nonprofit, nothing guarantees that I'll be treated fairly. And these guys are treated fairly, not because the organizations they work with truly want to do it, but because there are some regulations that guides that. All right. There are processes, the duty of care, and the responsibilities that the law has placed on these organizations meant that they would put them in hotels that are more secure than where they will put me. All right. So regulations are not necessarily bad in themselves if it is framed properly to enable our operations. So that is the key word. We need to look for how these regulations enable our operations, helps us to guarantee public trust, and help us to be able to do the work that we do effectively. So I encourage you to check this report so that you can see what some of these laws look like. Of course, it might look burdensome, but when you look at the fact that governance is a relationship, and we have all come together voluntarily to say this is what we want to do, then we must report on accounts, we must report on where money has come from, we must report on our activities, and we must all stay responsible for whatever we have done in that organization, whether we have registered or we have not registered. I mean, why do some landlord resident associations fight? You know, when they have someone to keep security money and that person, you know, cannot account for it. So whether you register or not, accountability is important, transparency is important, responsibility is important, and also being fair to one another is important. Now, what are the key organizational policies you must have? Recall that we started with that definition from, is it the, I've forgotten the second organization that defined that second definition of governance. It says processes, policies, all right? So which key organizational policies do you now need to have as an organization? And why are you having them? Your constitution defines how you would govern yourself, whether you would have a board of trustees or a steering committee, how they would meet, what decisions they would take, what role for your management, when there are conflicts, how you would manage it, when you want to close shops, how you would do that. Your constitution defines that. Now, you now need your board policy, which says if members don't come to meetings 2 times in the 4 times they need to come, then they are no longer members. Or board members must have fundraising role. This is how board members would meet. This is how the chair of the board will call the meetings. This is what will happen when the board can't decide on issues. That will be your board policy. Then you now come to conflict of interest. When we start making the 1 million, if the board chair comes and say, I want you to recruit my daughter, what happens? All right. Or you as the executive director, your wife is doing in the line of business that you would need. All right. How do you manage this conflict of interest? Note, conflict of interest is not necessarily bad in governance if you declare it. And that's another area of conversation. If you declare it and whoever is coming can be just, but then note, family members, close associates, those that have very, very deep relationships with you are not allowed within the conflict of interest conversations. All right, because you are using someone else's money that has been given to you in trust. You must be able to show that this money is not coming to us, rather it is going to the beneficiaries, and that the only thing we have used it for, based on the definition of non-governmental organization that we mentioned, is to pay salaries and services delivered to us in the course of fulfilling this objective. That means that you must also have your human resources policy. How do you recruit staff? What would be staff leave? What does maternity leave look like? And you know, for me, I have two programs staff that just went on maternity, and it's a new learning and new journey for me as an executive director, right? So what happens when they're on maternity leave? How do you ensure your gender issues? How do people report issues when they want to report? What are staff benefits and all of those bits? That's your human resources. Even volunteers, all right, are captured within your human resources, because I do recognize that many of us are volunteer executive directors, and we do also have a lot of volunteers supporting our work. But there has to be human resources for them. How do we respect them? How do we respect their time? How do we respect the resources that they are bringing to us? Our financial resources, how do we manage them? All right. How do we account for these finances? What would be our processes for accounting? What would be our processes for managing resources in the organization? Who can authorize, who cannot authorize? Who can do ABC, who cannot do ABC? If we need to do procurement or buy things beyond a certain amount of money, who would authorize that in terms of our procurement? Gender and social inclusion is also very important, thinking about diversity, involving people with disabilities, ensuring there's the right mix of gender, both in staffing and board, and also ensuring that we pay attention to inclusion. Maternity leave is an inclusion policy, not human resources only and 10% left to me alone. Because the way I've seen it, they have to bring children or look for a crèche. They have to think through how to feed them and all of those bits. An organization must think through that as inclusion and be able to budget for it. So there's now the need to start thinking of gender-based budgeting, where you're looking at maternity cover. And you can't ask your staff, would you be pregnant next year or no? You have to start budgeting for, anticipating every year. All right, so there has to be that gender-based budgeting that we need to start thinking about. Communications, how do we communicate internally and externally to our stakeholders? You remember we mentioned governance is relationship, and relationship, we're told, is successful or becomes successful if we communicate and communicate effectively. So what is our communications policy going to look like? Fraud and anti-corruption policy is also very important, because you need to be able to show that if fraud happens, this is how we'll deal with it, and this is how it will be reported. Also, your AML CFT, that is required by the law, that you must have anti-money laundering and countering of terrorism financing policy. Then also your privacy policy, because you receive data from your beneficiaries, you must respect that. And there's the privacy code of, I can't remember what the name is now, the privacy code, as it well, let me just use that one, 2019, that says you must respect people's right to privacy. When you collect their data, you must tell them how you're going to use that data. And when if you have completed this form, the registration for this event, you would see that Act Foundation was asking you that, in order to comply with GDPR, right? Even though we also have the Nigerian version, which is a code at the moment, but not yet legislated, that, we'll be using your data and that, we'll be taking pictures. Would you allow us? That's the consent, right? We must all now start thinking through that, because that's important. If any of your beneficiaries decides to sue you for taking their data and not telling them what you use it for and how you will protect it, they would win you in the court of law. I'll quickly rush to how you can wind down. There's nothing that starts that doesn't have an end, technically. So you might decide to say you want to wind down or dissolve your organization after you have registered. It might be because you are fighting. It might be because you have met your objective, and the law says you can actually decide to wind down. But for you to wind down, this will be guided by the constitution of your organization. So that's why when you are developing your constitution, don't just give it to a lawyer to do copy and paste. You must think it through. The winding down, how do we want to wind down? Based on the insolvency regulations of 2022, right? The law was only, the regulation was only approved by the minister in 2022. And NNU provided some guidance to CAC on how best this can be done. You can only dissolve by court upon application. Whether it is your board or whether it is CAC itself, CAC can also dissolve, but all of this can only be done by the court. And this is the best practice. This is what Nigeria has committed to globally says. But if you are going to trigger the winding down, 50% or more than 50% of your members would have to sign a resolution that we're winding down. All right. And the grounds for dissolution are Section 850, subsection 2 of CAMA. Or if your organization is charged with money laundering, these are the grounds that you can be dissolved. So we must pay attention to CAMA, Part F. And that, by the time the court dissolves the organization, you must come back to CAC 28 days within the process, within the time that the court has, pronounced that your organization is dissolved. All right, and you must publish that court order, the information in a national daily, and that your assets of your organization would also be transferred to another organization. All right, and that organization must be an organization that has the same objective as yours, and you will provide an evidence for that. Again, this is the best practice globally, and we're glad that CAC took this on board. And that, if within the decisions of the court, no liquidator is approved for you, the CAC has powers to approve one, and this liquidator can then help you follow through your liquidation process. Now, so far, what have we discussed? We have discussed whether you start yourself or someone asks you to start or you're interested, you are voluntary, you are self-governing, and there's no profit. You can register or not register. And when you register, there are major laws that you need to comply with at the moment. There are some that we're still trying to seek more clarifications on, but that they are good for the sector if those laws are reformed based on the DNA of our sector. I've also asked that, there are more laws that you need to read about and think through them and provide context so that we can use those to reform the laws. We've also spoken about how you can dissolve and wind down. On this note, I'll hand over back to Abiodun.
Wow, thank you very much, Mr. Oyebisi. That was some packed full session, I must say. In fact, even attendees could testify to the fact that they are super loaded. Yes, I see some hand claps. Yes, keep them coming, keep them coming. Thank you very much. So quickly, we will take some questions that we have. Can I go ahead, Mr. Oyebisi?
Yes, please.
Okay. We have a question from Maureen who says, concerning funds reports to Shumo, it has been difficult to update their transaction details as required through the website. What are they doing wrongly? What is it that you can advise them to do? Are there other ways that we can report transactions that are above the stipulated 500,000 amount required?
This will be for SCUMO, and I think at the moment we're still waiting for directives on how best to do the cash transaction reporting. You have to send it by email, not actually on the website. It has to be by email to info@scumo.org. What I've encouraged people to do is, until we get a new directive, continue to report, all right? So that when the new directive then comes, we know whether we're no longer reporting, because there's no directive at the moment. But if we are going to do that to SCUMO, it is via email, not on the website, not on their portal.
Okay, thank you very much. Khadija would like to clarify if you said that they're to submit income and liabilities in July and December, or is it July and January?
Yes, so the law says biannual statement of affairs. So what the statement of affairs is saying is that your income and liabilities, and there's a form that you fill. Once you complete that form, you send it to an email address that CAC has provided. But even now, CAC is trying to automate it. I do not know whether, as at the last time I checked, it was through emails, but maybe they've been able to do the automation and you can now update fully on the website. Because, as a non-profit now, if you check the CAC website, all right, if you have not filed your annual returns in the past few years, your organization will be inactive on that website, all right? So it means that you haven't filed annual returns. So if your donor decides to find you on the CAC database, you are inactive, all right? And that sends a bad signal. So CAC is trying to do everything, automate all of their systems now. It's been hard, it's been difficult, all right, in terms of ease of compliance. And these are conversations we're having with the Corporate Affairs Commission to make it easy for us to be able to comply. At the moment, it's cumbersome, I acknowledge that, but we're engaging with Corporate Affairs Commission on this.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I'll take Aisha's question. I thought you addressed it, but I'll still take it in case some people came in after you said that. She wants to know if it is a must to register with CAC.
No, it's not. It's not. Except that if you do not register, then if you are thinking of getting money from organizations like Hack Foundation, so when I say getting money, applying for grants, then it becomes tricky. Some organizations, though, would give you money provided you have a bank account. All right, but in Nigeria today, to have a bank account, you must be registered. And that's why that CBN directive, we need to engage with it as a sector to see how we can help unregistered nonprofits to be able to have access to banking services.
Thank you very much. Salt SCN would like to know, she'd like to know how to join an NGO and what are the benefits.
Well, to join the Nigeria Network of NGOs, please visit our website, www.ngo.org. And part of the benefits is trainings like this. So We do trainings like this on a regular basis and also provide tools for our members to be able to comply, including advocating in behalf of the sector to regulators, plus also building the capacity of our members. As of the last time I checked, we've been able to train physically over 1,000 nonprofits in about 12 states, moving to 12 states across the country. So these are some of the benefits you get. Of course, we keep improving on ourselves and also paying attention to feedback that our members are giving us.
Great, thank you very much. And I would like to know if it is possible to revise the constitution of their NGO that has been in operation for over 5 years.
Yes, absolutely, it's possible, and you have to review it based on your realities. But once you're doing that, CAC must approve it, and that's where the law comes in. So your constitution becomes valid when it is reviewed by CAC and approved by them.
Okay.
But you can.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to encourage us to please use the Q&A chat box for our questions so that they're not missing in the main chat box. Okay, I'll go over to Ugochukwu's question. With respect to insurance and national health funds, if an NGO already has an insurance for its staff, like health insurance and group life, do they still need to remit NSITF and national health funds? And then she would like to plead with Mr. Oyebisi for this to be taken into consideration in their discussion with the governing body.
Yeah, I mean, totally. We need some directives there, and that's why we're escalating our engagements with the National Social Insurance Trust Funds. There are a lot of ambiguity and clarity that we need, and I'm sure that in a couple of months we should get those clarities right. Non-profit regulation in democracies that are not matured are a big issue. All right, so there are a lot of principles, global principles that these laws must comply with, and we're beginning to do that now in Nigeria. So I've taken that, and it's part of the conversations we are taking on board with NSITF. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. We have to run now. I know that Mr. Oyebisi also has to be in another meeting. And someone says, how can the Constitution be amended?
There are basic things that should go into your constitution. And I think as the Nigerian Network of NGOs, we have a guide around that. If you check online in our non-profit operational manual, we have some basic requirements that should be in your constitution, which helps to guarantee both your governance and also your sustainability, including meeting your vision and objectives.
Okay, thank you very much. Amaka Ike asks, if an organization is having challenges paying patients, is it okay to resort to paying staff as consultants so the organization has to pay only withholding tax? Is that
yeah, depending on what works for your system. Again, to be able to manage the challenges of cash flow, I've always advised that put your staff on contracts based on resources that you have, all right? And you can decide, because you can't put me on 1 year contract and say that's a salaried position. It will be a consultancy, all right? So that way, you only charge your withholding tax because I'm just on 1 year contract with you. And you can give it any name you like, whether it will be a consultancy or whatever. But what matters is I'm doing my work and I'm delivering, all right? So if that helps your system, yeah, why not? If not, because you don't even have money for 30 years, all right? You only have it for the period of time that you have been funded. So it would naturally come as a contract position and via consultancy.
Okay.
That's one route. You can decide to do other routes, all right? So there's nothing illegal about that, okay? It's about looking at your own system, your pulse, and deciding how best to frame this within the resources you have, so that you don't also don't get into trouble with the law on some things. Managing your risks.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Mahfouz would like to know if an organization has been active for the past 5 years, but just got a grant to operate. How does that organization file their annual reports?
Even for the 5 years that you have not had a grant, you've been spending money. That money needs to be accounted for, because whether it is money from your purse or not, that money technically belongs to the public, and I explain that to you now. You are meant to pay company income tax, and government has said because you are non-profit, don't pay it. So you have to report on that, and you have to be accountable so that we know whether you have done business with that status or not that we have given you, or whether you have stayed as a non-profit. So even if it is 50 naira that you have spent, you should have reported it in that last 5 years. So now if you go to the Corporate Affairs Commission, if you are registered, your organization will be inactive. So it means that you have to now pay penalties for the last 5 years and also pay the annual return fees for you to stay active. So for those that are just starting now, please, even if it is 20 naira you have spent, declare it so that your CAC knows. And even if you have not operated, if it is zero, they will see and take you as zero. These ones have not started operation. All right, it's better than defaulting and now having to pay penalties.
Okay, so I think that the next question would actually lead from what you have just responded to now. CEO, is there any con for a registered NGO that has not started operating in 2 years?
What you've not started operating means is that you've not done any activity, all right, and you've not had any income, all right. And what you are also now saying is that you probably don't have a bank account, and your bank account will be dormant. And the section of the law says that when your bank account is dormant, then they must trigger it to CAC. So the essence is, I'm not sure whether you've actually not done any activity. That you participated in this event is an activity, all right? You've used internet data, all right? You have also used your staff time to attend. All of these has to be factored because, for instance, if you're going to be asking or writing for a grant, they want to also see how you have managed money before. What evidence would you show that you have that? So think through your activities in the last 2 years. I know sometimes as founders, we would have spent from our purses without taking note of those. The ones you can remember, put them down and let someone come in and just audit you. We're also working to ensure that small non-profits are exempted from some of these burdens of external audits. But our sector also needs to do a lot in giving feedback to CAC so that when we are advocating to CAC itself would see some sense, because the argument with CAC now is that majority of you are not complying. So we're not even seeing the challenge that you're telling us that are there.
Okay, so still leading out from that, Adesua asks, how does one rectify an inactive status with CAC?
So to rectify an inactive status, it means that you have to ensure that you have all your audits for all of the years that you have not filed. You must have money to pay the penalties. I think it is 15,000 naira per year, and also the additional 5,000 naira that you need to have paid if you are filing your annual returns properly. I hope the fees are right for all of the years, and your audits are ready. Once they are ready, then you will need to trigger these at the nearest CAC office in your state. Then they'll pick it all up from there. The majority of the things will have to be done online, I am aware. So this is where you either need a lawyer or a company secretary that is accredited by CAC, or that you do it yourself if you have been able to register and have an account on the portal.
Okay, thank you very much. Gabriel would like to know where they can find the form for biannual returns.
Please check the CAC website, cac.gov.ng or something, but just search it and look for CAC website. All of the forms are on the CAC website.
Okay. Okay, Aisha has a story to tell here. She says for her foundation, she decided to put a hold on activities and work on properly structuring the foundation, in terms of policy and all of that. And she's concerned that this might affect her annual reports and wants to know if it is risky to put out an annual report for the 2 years.
Yeah, it's not risky. It is what you have done. Yeah, it is what you have done. So that is where the transparency or around self-governing comes in. It is what you have done. And we have stopped. You can actually also report it to your donors to say, we have to look at our structures. We need to ensure that we have a system that can help us, to do ABC, and we focused on that. That is you self-governing and, ensuring that your internal structures can help meet your vision, your mission, or the objectives of the founder. All right. So put it all out there. And that restructuring also costs money. All right. It's just that we've not been paying attention to it. The fact that you pick up the phone and call Mr. Oyebisi, that's a cost. All right. And the time you spent on that, and the fact that Mr. Oyebisi decides to come to your office to sit down with you and help you restructure, even though he is not receiving any fee from you because you are a member, he can always issue you an invoice that you can also charge as in kind, So it's about paying attention to how we are running and also ensuring that we have a separate bank account. If you don't have a bank account yet, of course, you should also be able to justify why, and then report all of that as part of, your activity.
Okay, because of time, I'll take this one last question from Ogochukwu Ezeneu. She says, if an NGO is subleasing a part of its office, do they need to charge the tenants VAT on the rents?
Yes, but I think it's not VAT you are charging on the rent. You are charging withholding tax on the rent. I think it's that there's a tax that goes on that. Maybe withholding tax or VAT. I would have to check, but that's true. You have to charge that tenant one tax. I think I'm not sure whether VAT or withholding tax. I can check and send an email to Abiodun to send to you. But there's a tax on it, and thanks for bringing that up, because that also is an area where we need to seek clarification for from FRS on who pays that. Is it the tenant or the organization? And who holds it? Those are conversations, clarities that we need. But a tax has to be paid, whether it's now 5,000 or 10,000, whether it's now 5% or 10%. Again, we need clarity on that.
Okay, thank you. I know I said last question, but now this is going to be our last question. This is from Ishak, and I feel that some people can benefit from it. He's asking, how do we factor in the voluntary services into our annual report without increasing our tax?
So voluntary services, volunteers by nature are not meant to be paid. All right. Of course, you can cover their out-of-pocket allowances. And because usually these volunteers will be those that can give you support in terms of the skills that you're missing, you can create a system. And that's why, again, I'm saying that our own sector now needs to mature. In developed climes, they've been able to do an analysis of volunteer time, and they've put a cost to it. So in the US, I think it's about maybe $25 per hour. That's the time a volunteer is giving you in terms of equivalence. And I think in the UK, they've also been able to do that. Because of lack of data, it's a research area that the Nigerian Network of NGOs is very interested in. But because of lack of data, we can't actually put a figure to what it means to volunteer in a nonprofit and what that staff time means in terms of, someone is telling me it's $25. Thanks, Audrey. It's $25 to $27 in terms of that. So once you're able to put that to it then means that you're able to show how much these volunteers are contributing to your organization. And on a larger scale, we're able to also show how much volunteers are contributing to the economy of the country, because if we're meant to pay them, it means that we're paying them between $35 and $27, all right, per hour. All right, when you times that by month, we can't afford it. But they've given that to us in terms of their time and their skills and their knowledge, all right? And we have to be able to factor that. So it's a difficult terrain at the moment, but I'm sure your auditor, if that auditor knows how to audit a non-profit, they'll be able to factor it somewhere.
Okay, thank you once again, Mr. Oyebisi. You have touched on a couple of very important factors. You have gone through the essential characteristics of non-profits. You have talked about governance and then some of the key policies that non-governmental organizations should have. And then you went on to talk about how organizations that want to dissolve can go about doing that smoothly. Thank you very, very much. You want to say something?
Yeah, someone is on the chat saying that it is 10% that we're charging withholding tax, all right? So it's 10% on the rent and it is withholding tax. Thanks so much, Iko Wauka.
Oh, great, great. It's actually awesome to learn from one another. I know I have a couple of questions in the Q&A chat box around tax, but don't worry, our next facilitator will do justice to that. Mr. Oyebisi, are you still around with us?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Great. Okay. So you'll be hearing from Mr. Onibudo as well. He'll be touching on revenue regulations in the nonprofit sector. He'll be looking at some of the legal and administrative frameworks that we need to have as nonprofit organizations. And then he'll also be looking at some of the misconducts in the nonprofit sector. I know that the people in this room do not engage in such misconduct. But before we go ahead with our next session, before I bring in Mr. Saheed Onibudo, can we quickly take a poll that'll be coming up soon? Please complete it so that we can move on to our next session. Oluchi, over to you.
Thank you, Abiola. Sorry, can you hear me now? Sorry about that, everyone. Okay, so we have the polls up now. We're just trying to get a sense of the region you're joining us from, the role you play in your organization. Please try and answer as quickly as possible before we move on to the next session. Thank you. Please, we need more answers. We have about 120 online with us now. Please try and answer. Okay. Someone told me that the poll disappeared. I've relaunched it. Can we see it? Okay, thank you, thank you. Okay, I see people are answering now. Seems like we have mostly Nigerian attendees, but we also have a few from Europe. Thank you for joining us today. It's good to see that we also have a lot of founders and CEOs, but also people in finance, admin, programs, projects. It's good to have people from different fields because it's good to have knowledge of all these regulations from whatever role you play within your organization. And it's good to see that we have a lot of first-time attendees. If this is your first time at Art Foundation webinar, thank you for joining. We hope to see you at our future trainings. Okay, thank you, everyone. I'll be stopping the polls right now. Thank you for participating. And before we start on the next session, I'll just like to remind everyone, we mentioned it earlier, but we are celebrating our 5th anniversary. So we have an upcoming Breakfast Dialogue Conference, which we have every year. So I'll be putting the registration link in the chat box. Make sure to click and register. It's on the 28th of September. So we look forward to you joining us there to celebrate our 5 years of social impact. I'll now move on to Abiodun to introduce our next speaker. Thank you, everyone.
I'm sorry. Okay, thank you very much, Oluchi. All right, before we go on to our next facilitator, if you're finding this this meeting valuable, could you type yes in the chat box? Okay. All right, yes. Okay, I'm seeing a couple of yeses. We're so glad to hear this feedback from you. All right, I'll move on quickly to Mr. Saheed Onibudo, who is a managing partner at DS Professional Services. He's got years of experience in statutory, taxation, financial advisory, and amongst other, and he's worked in different sectors of the economy. Mr. Saheed Onibudo has also worked with KPMG, so you'd understand that he actually knows his onions, and he's going to be talking about exactly what he has been practicing for over the years. So please, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Mr. Saheed Onibudo.
Good morning.
I think you are muted.
Can you hear me? Good morning.
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me and thanks for the introduction. I'm Said Onibudo, I'm the managing partner of DS Professional Services, and I'll be discussing task guides for non-profit organization. So I would like to thank the last speaker. He has actually done justice to virtually what I'm about to say. In fact, I'm even thinking if there should be a session. Thank you very much, Mr. Oyebisi, for that insightful session. I've also learned a lot from the session. So we'll just be discussing about the tax and the general frameworks as regards NGOs. And also, I would like to quickly touch on one of the questions about rent. In addition to the fact that withholding tax will be applicable, please note that any time an NGO uses its space to generate income, such income will be liable to tax. So in that perspective, the rental income will be liable to VAT in the hands of the NGO. And also the tenants paying the rent will also deduct withholding tax at 10%, just to put perspective to that. So these are some of the things that we'll get to know as the session progresses. Let me share my screen.
Mr. Onibudo, are you able to share your screen or would you like us to share from here?
Please share from your side, please.
Oh, great. Okay. Can you see my screen?
You're very well. Thank you very much. So we'll be discussing the task guide for non-profit organizations as part of the Aspire Coronation Trust Foundation Sector Insight. So in this session, we should understand, there are certain understandings expected of us, that we should understand the legal and administrative framework for establishing and managing non-profits with regards to incorporation, submitting annual reports and filing of tax returns, which the previous speaker actually dwelled on most of it. And also we'll speak about the overview of revenue regulation for non-profits, which is actually interwoven in the first point, and some misconduct that we've noticed during the course of our audit of non-for-profit making organizations over the years, and how best we can actually reduce such misconduct. So going by the legal framework has to do with incorporation of NGOs, incorporation of incorporated trustees, incorporations of company limited by guarantee. So when we speak about NGOs, when we speak about NGOs, we say not-for-profit making organizations. Non-for-profit making organizations are entities set up and formed for the purpose of making non-profit making purposes. These organizations are expected to develop, promote health, educational, literacy, scientific, sporting, charitable, cultural and social values. So it therefore means that if you are setting up a company other than purpose of these activities stated above, you might not be registering an NGO. And also, at the point of registering with CAC, the lawyer or the company secretary assistant will definitely spot all these things. And the income and profits of not-for-profit organizations are to be applied solely towards the promotion of the object, and it should not be distributed to members of the NFPOs unless permitted by the Act. So simply, we are saying that, so for a profit-making organization, at the end of the year, you do your financial statement, you report profit. In the case of NGOs or not-for-profit making organizations, we speak about surplus and deficit. We don't use the word profit or loss. And that surplus for NGOs is rerouted back to the business and not for distribution among the members. And that's why some grantors will tell you that one of the requirements is tell us how you are able to self-sustainability. Self-sustainability simply means in a year where you do not have income or grant from anywhere, how do you intend to keep the foundation going? So for an ongoing foundation, it definitely means that your proud back surplus should be used in maintaining the activities of the NGO rather than distributions to members of the to the trustees as we have under the limited liability companies. And we said not-for-profit organizations most likely will limit ourselves to Part F of the CAMA, Companies and Allied Matters Act 2020, forgetting the fact that companies also limited by guarantee under Part B of CAMA are also fall under this category of not-for-profit organizations, though they are not as common as those registered under Part F. And also the companies and, okay, someone is saying that I should reiterate on the plan back. Plan back simply means, so at the end of the financial year, you have a profit of less surplus of 10 million. So surplus simply means your income from grants, less attributable expenses, staff salaries, outreach, field visits, professional fees, legal fees, depreciation of fixed assets of machinery that you use. At the end of the day, you have a surplus. The surplus should stay in the foundation and not to be distributed to the members of the NGO. And when I mean plowback simply means that profit that you have or that surplus that you have in last year should be used for running around for the business or for the NGOs this year in the event that grants are not coming in as expected. And that is why I said one of the requirements for grading an NGO is sustainability. Sustainability simply means if you do not have this grant in, if I give you grant this year, if you don't have it next year, does that mean that your NGO will collapse? And if you feel you are relying on other grantors, yes, we pray that there should be increase in grants. If you feel you are relying on other grantors, what if those other grantors fail or you could not get money? That should not stop the NGOs from running the activities, pending the time you're able to get another grant. So that's what I mean by plow back to the foundation and not to be distributed as profit in the hands of the members. And I said that CAMA has defined what company limited by guarantee is and also defined what incorporated trustees are. So from Part B, there is the limited by guarantee, and under Part F, we have the incorporated trustees. Pardon me, I'm not a lawyer. I'm an accountant and a tax practitioner. So, and that's why I'm quoting the section of the law that says that discuss what you mean by limited by guarantee. And one key factor when it comes to incorporation of these companies, whether limited by guarantee or incorporated trustee is the fact that you must use it to promote certain activities, whether religious, whether education, whether scientific, whether social development, cultural, sporting, and charitable purposes. Those key things are very peculiar when it comes to companies limited by guarantee and also companies limited by, and also incorporated trustees. So I would just like to just distinguish between both briefly. So to register as a company limited by guarantee, obviously you need the proposed name, you need the registered office address, you need to state whether the company will be limited by guarantee, and also there is a statement of guarantee. The statement of guarantee will be filled. Is a statement showing the subscriptions and what members of the company will contribute during the eventual winding up of the company or during the eventual settlement of debt of the company. And another thing, so I would just like us to have a step-by-step process in the registration procedure. So when these applications are submitted, the memorandum of the company of limited by guarantee shall not be registered without the authority of the Attorney General. So that's what distinguishes limited by guarantee from incorporated trustee. Over the time, I've had cause to ask some of my lawyer friends, and they said limited by guarantee, sometimes it might take longer procedure, probably because of these steps of Attorney General. So if the Attorney General of the Federation, it is expected that the Attorney General of the Federation reverts within 30 days to grant you authority to register the limited by guarantee. And if there are no objections received within 30 days from the Attorney General, it is not for you to stop there. You will not wait for the Attorney General forever. You are the commission, that's the Corporate Affairs Commission, can decide or can instruct you to make a publication to national newspaper. And that publication should be made after 30 days from not hearing from the Attorney General. So the registration process for limited by guarantee, you need to hear from the Attorney General within 30 days. Where the Attorney General does not revert in 30 days, you shall be expected to make like a publication international deals. And in that invitation, you make an advertisement in 3 national newspapers and invite objections. Objection simply means from the public, is there anybody that is not fine with the registration of this company as a limited by guarantee? And such objection by the members of the public must be submitted to the commission within 28 days from the advertisement. So the company limited by guarantee does the advertisement after 30 days of not hearing from the 30 days after not hearing from the Attorney General. Then within 28 days after the publication, the general public has to come back or report to the commission objections why this company should not be registered as a limited by guarantee. So the commission will further seek for documentation from the public to know the rudiments surrounding why this company should not be registered as a limited by guarantee. So in the event that the commission is satisfied with the advertisement of the company, then the company will be issued a certificate of incorporation and will have been successfully registered as a company limited by guarantee. So that's just the brief process concerning registration of a company limited by guarantee. Like I said, in the practical world, the process might be tougher, stiffer, and longer than it is. I just have to point some parts of the hammer for our enlightenment. And also, like I said earlier, incorporated trustees too are required to register. And the only difference is instead of going through the Attorney General, you are not doing that. That step is cut short. You are just presenting, you are just making a publication like we have under limited by guarantee. You are inviting the public for scrutiny or for objection. If objection is not received within 28 days, you'll be issued your certificate. So most times, if if we are engaged in registering an NGO before, the lawyer will tell you that you need to make publication, you need to wait for certain number of days. Yes, I've had encountered, so all these things actually, they actually ring bell because the lawyer actually said, wait for this number of days and before getting the certificate of incorporation. So those are the incorporation requirements for incorporated trustees and company limited by guarantee. So, and also we'll go to the publishing of annual reports. So, like we said, under Part B speaks to limited by guarantee, while Part F speaks to incorporation trustee. So, under the publishing of annual returns, so someone asked briefly how many days it takes for the certificate to be out. Well, like I said earlier, I'm not a lawyer, but from my experience, it takes roughly 2 months for the certificate to be out. So I think 2 months, give or take 2 months, the certificate should be ready. So like under the publishing of annual report, I have to also separate it because the provisions of section 420 is different from provisions of section 848 of the Companies and Allied Matters Act. And the annual returns for a company limited by guarantee shall be in the form prescribed by CAMA under the 9th schedule. So the 9th schedule will show, so for example, if you are publishing or submitting your annual report, that's what it means, filing of annual report, which the previous speaker actually discussed on, so I'll not waste much time on it. You will need your audited financial statements. Audited financial statements or statement of affairs for companies that have not commenced business. So it must be signed by a firm of chartered accountants, then presented to the CAC for submission. After the era of COVID, I think CAC now receives submission online, and you can file your returns as an incorporated trustee, as limited by guarantee. You can file your returns online. The same rule governing the filing of returns for normal company is also the same rule governing filing for NGOs. Your account statement, your financial statement, your signed and sealed by a firm of chartered accountants. And also there's penalty for defaulting. So when there is a law, there must always be a penalty for defaulting in such law. So from there, we'll go to submission of tax returns, which I feel will be our focus in this meeting. So all NFPOs that have not-for-profit organizations. So here under submission of tax returns, the rule that governs limited by guarantee is the same rule that governs the incorporated trustees. So I classify them as NFPOs. All NFPOs are expected to submit or to register for tax purpose at the tax incentive management offices. Now, the old way of registering at the medium tax office is gone. Now, you are expected to register at the tax incentive management offices, and such offices are found at various states of the country. So, for example, the tax management department of in Lagos is at Agidingbi. We still file returns for an NGO at Agidingbi. Before now, it used to be medium tax offices, but now there's a special department saddled with the responsibility of accepting tax returns and registration of taxes for NGOs, pioneer companies, political parties, cooperative societies. Now, this same department is saddled with the responsibility of carrying out tax audits on NGOs. Now, we'll get to why should companies be tax audited? After all, I'm not expected to pay tax. So you are expected to register with the FIRS, and also you are expected to register with the State Board of Internal Revenue. The reason why you're expected to register with the FIRS is because even though you are not required to pay taxes, but the law still empower you to file your returns. So we need to understand that there's a difference between payment and filing. Payment is when it has the cash implication or financial implication, while filing is just submission of your financial statement, just like you do under the annual returns with CAC. But with these, now there is a platform called Tax Promax. All companies, both liability, both profit making and non-profit making, are expected to go into FIRS Tax Promax to register for tax purposes after registering physically at the respective TIMO, that's the Tax Incentive Management Offices. The way it's applicable for FIRS is also the way it's applicable to the State Board of Internal Revenue. So for the State Board of Internal Revenue, because you are not exempted from payee, which the previous speaker actually spoke about, you are not also exempted from withholding tax. You are expected to register with the State Board of Internal Revenue in case you have to remit payee and also remit withholding tax, because as an NGO, you are also an agent of the government to deduct withholding tax on services rendered by companies or business names or individuals, as the case may be. And because of the fact that we have different State Board of Internal Revenue across the country, you have to understand the way each state works. We are very conversant with Lagos. The process for Lagos, it might be different from that of Kaduna, while the Kaduna might be different from SCTIRS in Abuja, might be different from Edo State Internal Revenue Service. But that of Lagos, after registration, you'll be issued a payer ID. And also for Lagos, which I know Ogun State and Rivers are also trying to harmonize, is now Lagos filing of returns with LIRS is now also automated, just like FIRS. It's no longer business as usual, take to the bank and make payment. No, you have to generate a bill online before you proceed to the bank to make payments. So everything is now automated. So a new NGO, not-for-profit making organization, is expected to register with FIRS and also register with the State Board of Internal Revenue, where the company is located. And the reason why, that's why sometimes you might be required to register with 4 different states, and I will explain. For an NGO, you can have employees across the state. You can have employees or consultants in Lagos, whereas the company or NGO is residing in Lagos. You can have employees or consultants in Kano. You can have in Abuja. You can have in Edo, which means that for you to remit payee and withholding tax on the staff or consultants, as the case may be, you have to be registered with this board of internal revenue in those states, because the law does not grant you that exemption as an NGO. And at the end of the day, there will be a unique ID given to you, which is the payee ID after successful registration. And no two companies or no two NGOs will have the same unique ID. That's why it's unique to you. So from there, we now need to understand the implications of these taxes. Now, I spoke about the registration. Before you start paying tax, before you start filing, you need to understand that you need to register. Now, I'm going to the implication of companies' income tax. Now, the mistake most of us usually make, or people running NGOs, is, and I noticed over years, during our audits, during our discussions with NGOs, is we are always quick to say, I'm an NGO, I'm not meant to pay tax. I'm an NGO, I'm not meant to pay tax. Yes, you are not meant to pay tax, ceteris paribus, if all things being equal. But in an instance where you are now doing things outside the scope of your constitution, So for example, like the typical example of that rent, it was not in your MEMAT, it was not in your constitution when you filed at CAC that you'll be earning rent on your building. That's maybe on your rent, you're subletting to another tenant, like a sublease arrangement. Please note that that portion of your revenue will be liable to income tax accordingly. Will be liable to VAT, will be liable to income tax, and will be there will be withholding tax on it. However, now that brings me to the issue of when I get to that, I'll speak on it. So, and also, please note that in addition to the fact that you are expected to pay, now I told you earlier that even though you are not meant to pay income tax, you are expected to file your returns. And unlike CAC, there is no 18-month grace when it comes to FIRS. FIRS simply means that you must file on or before 6 months after your accounting year end. So I will explain what that means I'll break it down. So for example, as an NGO, when you set up, what we mean by accounting year end is where you decided to prepare your books to. So for example, most companies, most NGOs adopt 31st December as year end. It definitely means that you are expected to file returns with the Federal Inland Revenue Service on or before 30th of June of the year following the accounting year end. So we are in 2022. The returns of 2021 should have been submitted by June. However, in June, the FIRS, in its magnanimity, extended the filing deadline by 2 months, which means by end of this August, companies should be prepared to be filing their returns. Failure to file will attract penalty of 25 months in the first month and 5,000 for every subsequent month of failure. And the Section 23 of the Companies Income Tax Act as amended exempt profits of any statutory, charitable, ecclesiastical, or similar association from company income tax. That is the standard. But there is a proviso, provided that such profits are not derived from any trade or business carried on by such organization or association. It is very, very key. That clause is very, very key. We've seen some financial statements, and as a matter of fact, there is a tax audit from Abuja we are currently undergoing. We are currently having with the FIRS. In the financial statement of the company, it was, other than the grants, there were some other incomes reported in the financial statements. Now, if you must do so, 2 things have to be done. 1, you have to write the CAC, that's the Corporate Affairs Commission, to say, I would like to engage, or I would like to do this business, even though it was not expressly stated in my constitution. Now, you writing CAC, well, the response might not come on time, but at least there should be an evidence that you actually wrote to CAC, because sometimes in the court of law, sometimes effort really matters. Did you actually make effort? And because of time, you have to do it and you report it adequately. So there's what we call segment reporting in financial statement. Segment reporting means that you are able to separate the non-profit business and the profit-making business, so that the taxes that you'll be paying will only be for the profit-making business. Because in the absence of that, FIRS will pick the whole income, the whole inflow, whether from grants, whether from other income rents as your revenue, and they will slam 32.5% accordingly on it. So that's why we are saying that you need to ensure that once you want to engage in profit-making activities, you have to notify CAC, and it must be well stated on your financial statement. And examples of income covered under the exemption include subscription fee by members, donation, grants, zakat, offerings, tithes, fund realized from launchings. These are things that are exempted. And like I said earlier, NFPOs that engages in any trade or business or invest in assets in any institution, the profits on such business will be charged to tax proportionately, provided is more than 25 million. That proviso is also important because based on the Finance Act 2019, FIS has come to tell us that they've classified companies into small companies, medium companies, and large companies. When your turnover is less than 25 million, you are not paying any tax, but you are still expected to file returns. So that's just the summary under the company's income tax returns. And like I said, failure to pay your taxes will attract penalty. So the summary under company's income tax returns is you are not expected to pay, you are expected to file. However, in the event that you make any profit-making activity, you will be expected to pay tax on such activity. Now, going to withholding tax. Now, for withholding tax, we also have this understanding that, no, I'm not meant to deduct withholding tax. Don't forget, withholding tax is an advance payment of income tax of the vendor rendering such service to you. It has nothing to do with your own revenue. I, as a professional, I render a professional service to an NGO. It is expected of the NGO to deduct withholding tax on my fee. And I will in return get my credit note on that transaction. So in such instance, it does not affect the NGO at all. The only way it may affect the NGO is, so for example now, which is also applicable under profit-making organization, your landlord is saying, me, I do not understand what you are trying to say, especially individual landlord. You cannot deduct withholding tax on this rent. You have to pay my full amount. Yes, we've had that challenges, but FIS has not been able to resolve it. What they keep saying is, in that instance, you have to self-account for it, which means instead of on a rent of 1 million, instead of paying the landlord 900,000 after deducting 10%, you are now paying the landlord, you're expected to pay 900. Now the landlord is saying is still on that 1 million. Now the implication is when FIS reviews your transaction for the year or for the month, they will pick that rent and assume that you should have deducted rent on it. So it's an ongoing discussion, and which it has always been reported to FIS that this person did not allow me to deduct. And for a client, but that's not an NGO, we're able to win that case because there was an email trail to that effect. Because we told the FIS that we made everything humanly possible to ensure that we deducted withholding tax, but this landlord did not agree, and we had a lot of email back and forth to that effect. Now FIS have to step it down when they were doing their tax audit report. Like I said, most of all these things, it depends on how you were able to face it during the tax audit or tax review exercise. And I said, withholding tax also has a timeline for filing. Unlike CIT, withholding tax is monthly. So if you have a transaction for the whole of August, all your transactions with your vendor that are liable to withholding tax in August are expected to be remitted to the FIRS on or before 21st of September, while to the state board where the vendor resides on or before 30th of September. FIRS is 21st, while LRS, OGRS, FCTRS, EIRS, or any state board of internal revenue is 30th day of the month following the month of transaction. So the way we do it is we group the transaction on monthly basis. We'll ask our client to send us the transaction reports for the month or seek for bank statement, analyze the withholding tax, advise the client accordingly, and make payments on or before the due date. And also, like I said earlier, the FIRS administers the transaction with limited liability company. So if an NGO pays rent through ABC Limited, such transaction will be liable to withholding tax payable to the Federal Inland Revenue Service. But if an NGO transacts a rental agreement, a rental transaction with Said Onibudo as an individual, then such payment goes to the state where Said Onibudo resides, not FIRS. And there are penalties for not payment of these of failure to deduct and failure to remit. 10% penalty plus interest at the CBN with discount rate. For LRS, I think it's 21% they adopt based on the last report I reviewed. And for FIRS, it's 19%, if I'm not mistaken. So that's and also we've done a table to guide us on some of the transactions that are liable to withholding tax and what are the applicable withholding tax rates. We have dividend, interest rate, royalty, director's fee, hire of equipment, commission, consultancy, technical management fee, legal, audit fee, and other professional fees, contract and agency agreement other than still in the ordinary course of business, building, construction, and all that. They all have their applicable rates. So as an NGO, you will need this rate because sometimes you will need to fall back to this rate to know, okay, this is a professional service, and rather than 10% on that transaction because it's not a limited liability company. I'm going to the next slide on value added tax. Now, same mistake we usually make, I'm not liable to pay tax. Yes, you're not liable to pay VAT, fine. Like I said, as applicable under company's income tax, whenever you do any activity, and please don't forget that VAT is not on industry, VAT is not on company, VAT is on the product itself. And that even speaks for itself. Res ipsa loquitur simply means that if an NGO engages in a professional service, and that professional service is beyond the scope of its constitution, it is deemed that such service will be liable to VAT because it is not what the NGO is cut out to do. Do you understand? So VAT is on the services or the goods that you are giving out, not even because you're an NGO. That's why they said VAT on goods purchased. VAT on good purchase, not VAT on NFPOs. VAT on good purchase for use in humanitarian donor funded project is at zero tax. Zero simply means that VAT is applicable, but it has no impact because it has 0%, which also means that you are not liable to VAT. And further, we said NFPOs are not exempted from VAT. As such, where the NFPO procures contract purchases goods that are not directly used for human donor funded projects, VAT shall apply at the prevailing rate. The prevailing rate of VAT is 7.5%. Any services or services procured or consumed by NGO is liable to VAT at the prevailing rate, except where such service is exempt under the Act. So what we are trying to say, like I said earlier, I, as a Said Onibudo, render service to an NGO, and I charge such NGO VAT. My service to that NGO is VAT-able. So we've seen instances where NGOs will come back and say, no, I'm not paying VAT. Because at the end of the day, I will be the one to take the pinch from FIRS and say, you render service to NGO, you don't charge back. The people that are expected to deduct VAT at source, based on relevant section of the VAT Act, are oil and gas services. If I render service to an oil and gas company, oil and gas companies can deduct VAT and withholding tax at source. If I render service to a government agency, a government parastatal, a government ministry, such VAT will be deducted at source from that government by that government ministry. NFPOs are not meant to deduct VAT at source. So sometimes, if NFPOs refuse to pay VAT, we are the ones facing the brunt, because when our firm is being audited for VAT compliance, they pick it and say, why have you not paid VAT on these transactions? And also, where NFPO procures goods and services from non-resident suppliers, by the relevant section of the value-added tax, it shall deduct the VAT at source and remit to the FIRS. And there are failure penalties for failure to file. The penalty has risen from 5,000 to 50,000. So late filing of returns now is no longer business as usual. Whereas if you are doing your business in line with what it was cut out to, you understand, you are not expected to pay any tax. If your sole income is from grants, you're not expected to pay. If your even income, your other income, I need to bring it in. If your other income that is not for profit making, if it's not up to 25 million, you are not expected to pay VAT. So applicable to companies' income tax. Now, the 25 million threshold still applies to NGO that carries out activity outside the NGO. So these are some of the things that can serve as a relief for NGOs carrying on services. And also, I need to also correct the initial notion. VAT on rent of building, property, immovable item is no longer applicable. So when you rent out an apartment, you are based on the Finance Act, you are not expected to charge VAT on that transaction. That transaction is exempt from VAT and is well written and stated in the Finance Act, because goods that are liable to VAT are goods that are movable. So, for example, and that differentiates between rent of motor vehicle. If a motor vehicle out for someone else to use, that transaction is liable to VAT, because motor vehicle is movable, which conforms to the definition of a good according to the VAT Act. While building is immovable, so it means that VAT on rent of building will not be applicable any longer. So from VAT, we'll speak to personal income tax returns. This is another, I think this is one of the income tax, this is one of the tax filing that I know that most NGOs get right. Because I think from the get-go, they are aware that their employees, the salary they earn as a promoter, as a trustee, will be liable to personal income tax. And when we speak about personal income tax, we are saying that personal income tax is divided into two broad categories. It's divided into payee and also the personal income tax return. The distinguishing factor between, divided into payee and direct assessment. The distinguishing factor between payee and direct assessment is payee is paid and borne by employees, while direct assessment is borne by directors, by self-employed owners, directors of business, promoters of business, trustees of business will be assessed under direct assessment and not payee, while employees will be assessed under the payee tax. And we said that the income that will be liable to tax is the chargeable income. And how do you arrive at your chargeable income? Your chargeable income is your gross salary or gross income. Gross salary for an employee is income from all sources of the employment, basic housing, transport, other allowances, clothing, leave, 13th month bonus are all gross salary. Then there are some reliefs allowed by the law. Examples of such are employee pension, National Housing Fund, National Health Insurance Scheme, consolidated relief allowance. Those reliefs will be deducted from the gross salary to arrive at the chargeable income. It is the chargeable income that will now be subjected to the payee tax table using the applicable rates. The rate is a graduated payee table. And I said, NFPOs are also expected to comply with other employee-related taxes, like pension, which the previous speaker actually mentioned, pension, NHS, industrial training funds, employee compensation scheme. So these are some of the employee-related taxes, the NGOs, and these are the things that also make the sector. So if you want to gain more workforce, once the employee hears that, they do pension, they remit pension, automatically is a plus to such organization, meaning that the future of such employee is somewhat secured. So from there, we'll speak about minimum tax. So minimum tax is saying that, so what we've noticed over time is, in the past, even if you earn 10,000 per month, you will still pay tax. So with the introduction of the Finance Act of 2021, it says 2020 says that there shall be you will be expected to pay minimum tax at 1% of your gross income, and also minimum wage workers are exempted from minimum tax. So if you earn a gross salary of 30K below, you are exempted from payee. Before now, the minimum wage did not come into place. It's a new introduction. So even if you earn below 30,000 in the past, you are still expected to pay minimum tax. But government is now saying, if you earn below this minimum wage, there is no tax for you at all. So it's a step in the right direction. And also some of the requirements expected for filing is the summary of annual returns. So for some of us, we are conversant with, and we'll have seen the adverts, even we have listened to adverts, even on radio and TV, where LIRS will tell you that you need to file your annual returns. File your annual returns. Filing of annual returns simply means what we call Form H1. It means that the annual returns, the transaction, the gross salary, and the tax paid for all your staff in the preceding year should be submitted this year on or before January 31st of the following year. So what we are trying to say is, last year was 2021. You deducted salary, you paid salary, you deducted taxes. You have to summarize all those transactions and submit to LIRS on or before 31st January 2022. Otherwise, you'll be liable to penalty of 500,000 for companies and 50,000 for body corporates. You know why it's required for, the reason why LIRS, I can speak to LIRS and even OGRS, very conversant, is that so when the employees need to get their tax clearance certificates, it will be easy to trace on the Form H1 to apply for tax clearance. It also make things easier for the companies. So for last year, if you file that of last year, this year, it will be easier for you to obtain tax clearance certificates for employees that do not have tax clearance in the past, and also easier for you to update the tax position of employees that have not done in the past. For Lagos State, all these things are now done online on LIRS platform called the eTax platform. While for other states are also, while some are still manual, some are still trying to upgrade to the online system. And also, like the Form H1 is only applicable to employees. For directors, now, unlike payee, where you remit on monthly basis, the directors are not expected to remit on monthly basis under the direct assessment scheme. What they do is, at the end of that financial year, you aggregate all your income sources. You know, as a director, it's very possible that you earn income from different sources. You can be director in 5 companies. So when you now gather or collate all those income, you are expected to file your own annual return under the direct assessment scheme on or before 31st March of the year following the year of transaction. So as a director in A, B, C, D, E, and I earned income from A, B, C, D, E, the expectation is that on or before 31st March, I have to declare such income and file accordingly. However, at this point, you are not expected to pay. You are expected to only declare. When you now declare, LIRS will now, I'm limited to LIRS, the State Board of Internal Revenue will now review what you have submitted and reconcile. So for example, they must have done like a private profiling of such director. Maybe a week before, the director was seen or the trustee was seen at the club spending money or at the party lavishing money. So LIRS can also assess you. Where does he stay? What car does he drive? are the families abroad? Are they here? These are some of the things why the LRS use, or the State Board of Internal Revenue use, in assessing individuals to a revised assessment. So as I can declare 10 million as gross income in the financial year. LRS or State Board of Internal Revenue saying, no, we know who you are, you can do better. But I don't think it can ever be lower than what you've declared. It must start from the best you can get is what you've declared. Once they are fine with what you've declared, they will tell you you can proceed to make payments. But you should not make payments unless you have reconciled with FIRS. And what we've done also in the next slide is to let us know the graduated tax table rate for personal income tax. This is applicable to pay as you earn, also applicable to direct assessment. So if your taxable income, please note that taxable income is not gross income. And please note that these figures are actually per annum. So there's a way, there's a template we follow and get the resulting tax liability for companies under the payee and the direct assessment scheme. So in the next slide, we'll also speak to capital gains tax. So I'm trying to take the taxes one by one, and as we follow, we tend to know how it's applicable to us as NGOs. Now, for capital gains tax, yes, you are exempted from disposal of chargeable assets. Chargeable assets, according to capital gains tax, can include property, motor vehicle, except otherwise exempted from the Capital Gains Tax Act. Yes, the law is saying that you are exempted from capital gains tax where you meet two conditions. One, the gain on such disposal are not derived from disposal of any asset acquired in connection with any trade or business carried on by the NFU. We've reiterated this time and time that once you do any trade, definitely you are working through the route of tax payment. So also, that's what the capital gains tax is also saying, that any asset you dispose. So for example, maybe in your segment reporting, you have an asset for the profit business. Once you sell that asset of that profit business, you are saying that you are liable to pay capital gains tax. And also the second condition is that the gains are applied purely for the purpose of the activities of the NFPO. Like I said, any money you generate from NGO should be used for the proper running and activities of the NGO, should not be distributed by the promoters, should not be distributed by the trustees. In the best form is maybe the promoters should be on a salary rather than getting, you are not even expected to distribute any form of profit. And that's one of the things that the capital gains tax is also saying. And it's saying that gains from disposal of tangible assets of NSPOs are liable to CGT at 10% where any of the above conditions are not met. So if you meet one and you do meet the other, it's a no-no, you pay CGT. You have to meet both conditions. And the tax is administered by both FIRS and State Board of Internal Revenue, depending on who is selling. If a company is selling fixed asset or disposing of fixed asset, then it's payable to FIRS. If it's an individual that is disposing of fixed assets or chargeable asset, as the case may be, then it's payable under State Board of Internal Revenue. So we also speak on stamp duty. Stamp duty is also, the reason why I added stamp duty is because it's also a latest development in the scheme of FIRS. We've reviewed reports by FIRS, and to our surprise, we are seeing stamp duty. And the truth of the matter is, the law actually empowers FIRS to administer stamp duty. So this is also a tax or a duty or tax, because it has an act that is also expected of an NGO. So if you have an agreement, so long it's provided for, so long the law supports that agreement, it has to be stamp duty. It is a it is a dutiable transaction which attracts stamp duty. So NGOs also are not exempted from stamp duty in any form. Those, for some of the rates, the next slide speaks about the rates. They're actually low, but depending on the volume of transaction, this stamp duty might cause some problems. We are reviewing a report by FIRS where the stamp duty to be paid by the company, though a limited liability company, is 15 million, which most companies will have not paid attention to. So we are reviewing the report vis-a-vis what is obtainable in the act, because we also know FIRS will also try to overshoot things, just like companies consultant will also like to do things from the minimal point of view. And we said NFPOs are required to comply with the provisions of the Stamp Duty Act. So the next slide speaks to some dutiable instruments and the applicable duty rate, from admission as a barrister to rent, to appointment of trustee, to bond, to debenture. They all have their rates. And the rate could be flat or ad valorem. Flat means there is a flat rate, not depending on the value, while ad valorem simply means according to the value of the transaction. So if the value of the transaction is 50 million, then with an ad valorem rate, it therefore means that you are paying a certain percentage of the value. That's what ad valorem means. And that's what we've listed in this slide and the next and the subsequent one. And there's a long list. I think there are about 26. So these are some of the dutiable transactions. So for misconduct in the non-profit sector, we've just tried to gather our experience based on what we've observed during our field work and all that. Misconduct sometimes might not be deliberate fraud. Misconduct can be ignorance. Misconduct can be unwillingly. Misconduct can be the fact that, oh, I've not been told. And a case point is the present tax audit we are doing for a foundation. The past years before we took over, there's some classification issue. And when it comes to classification issue, FIRS does not take it lightly until you are able to justify. In the process of justification, there might be a lot of issues that might come up. So some of the misconduct that we're able to gather is, one, distribution of surplus to the board of the trustees. Like I said, even with the relevant section of the Companies and Allied Matters Act, you are not expected to distribute your surplus as form of dividend or anything. If you are doing that, you are saying that you are a profit-making organization. Rather, what you do is to plow back into the foundation or into the NGO to cater for days where you might not have enough funds. Engaging in trading and profitable activities without the express permission of the Corporate Affairs Commission, this is seen as ultra-virus. Ultra-virus is a punishable offense under CAMA, where you go beyond the scope of your power. You've gone beyond what is expected of you in your constitution. So you need to seek the permission of this thing. These are also some of the misconduct we need to guide against. And also non-keeping of proper books of accounts. This is a misconduct that can lead to huge tax liabilities. Falsifying records in an attempt to reduce tax exposure. Yes, there are tax planning and there's tax avoidance and tax evasion. Tax avoidance is the tax planning, while tax evasion is the no-no in the eyes of the law. So if you need a consultant to help you look your books and advise accordingly. So some of the tax planning that we do sometimes is when you send your reports on monthly basis for withholding tax, we tell you, okay, by law, you can be able to defend this. This, when it comes to tax audit, we can defend this because especially withholding tax is very broad and it depends on where you are looking at it from. Also, not filing of annual returns and income tax returns as I went due with the relevant authorities, CAC, FIRS, EFCC, State Board of Internal Revenue is also misconduct. So signatory to bank accounts and other confidential documents. We've seen some audits that we do as a statutory auditor, and we see that is the executive, the head that is having access to source that is associated to some of the bank accounts, this might raise some issues, internal control problems. Using NFPO as a cover for fraud, lack of internal control system or committees to check the activities of members, management of override or control. You are the one setting the control. Nobody is checking you. So when you break the law, nobody will checkmate you. The management of override also speaks to lack of internal control and lack of proper evaluation of donors. You don't want to be, you need to do your KYC. That's where the Mr. ABC actually touched on that. That is very, very important. You do your KYC. You do not want to be caught unawares. Before you accept grant from any donor, you need to ask and do your due diligence to see if that person is of questionable character. I think that was where I'll end the session for today. I will entertain any question from any angle related to the topic.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oni. You actually need to take a bottle of water for that. That was very, very insightful, I must say. Okay, so without further ado, I will go on to the Q&A box to see the questions we have. Okay, in the area of payment of staff taxes, if we have to pay them as consultants, that is payment of withholding tax. I know there will be need for tax identification number for remittance. How do we go about getting this for our staff?
So let me speak to Lagos, because I'm very conversant with that. So the way it works is, okay, so the way it works is you register on the, like I said, everybody has to go e-tax. It's not very easy. Once you go to the e-tax platform of LIRS, even your staff can register individually to get their number. You don't need to go to the tax office to get number. You can register on the LIRS e-tax platform, fill the necessary documentation online. It will require BVN, then you have your number. For individual, it starts with N, that's for Lagos. While for company, it starts with C. It's self-explanatory when you visit the LIRS platform.
Okay, thank you very much. And I would like to know if it is possible to convert a non-profit to limited by guarantee.
Well, like I said earlier, it might be possible. I would not be able to speak extensively on it because that's from the legal point of view. You understand? But I don't think once you meet the requirements as stated in CAMA, I don't see anything stopping from conversion.
Thank you. Are we expected to pay tax on donations?
When you say on donations, the donation you receive as an NGO, you're not expected to pay tax on it because that's your core business. That is why you are set out, that's what you are set up to do. So there's no tax applicable on donation.
Okay, thank you. Amaka says, to be able to sustain their NGO, they collect registration fees from their members. Does this fall under subscription fee that is exempt from tax?
Yes, it can be seen as subscription fee.
Okay, great. Okay, she further asked, if we have a co-working space arrangement whose proceeds are used in running the organization apart from VAT being paid to FIRS, would they still be liable to pay any other tax?
I didn't get that, please.
Okay, so she says they have a co-working space arrangement and the proceeds are used in running the organization. And she would like to know that apart from VAT, will she need to pay any other tax?
Yes, I stated expressly that any income that you generate from or other than what you are set up to do, like donation, membership, subscription, registration fee, you will be expected to pay income tax on it. So you have to do what we call segment reporting. So you have to segmentalize the co-working space, income from the co-working space, and the expenses separate from your real foundation business. So you have to pay income tax on such arrangements.
Okay. Still from Amaka, she asks, where does one pay withholding tax on professional fee of auditor? that is an and co. I guess that's the form of registration. Where does it go to and what percentage is it?
So since it's an ANCO, it's 5% and it goes to the state where the professional firm resides.
Okay, thank you very much. LJ asks, for nonprofits who are registered for education of children and realize that along the line, mothers should be given microloans to help such children get education, should they be paying VAT for this?
Please repeat that question.
Okay, so LJ says that their organization is registered for education of children. And then along the line, they now realize that the mothers of these children actually require microloans to be able to, I'm assuming, get the children some education. So he's asking, should they pay VAT on this loan that they are issuing? Should the mothers be expected to pay VAT on it?
So, ab initio, even for a profit-making organization, interest on loan is not vatable. So that question, there's no VAT applicable on it.
Okay, so they're not supposed
even
to.
for a profit-making organization, interest on loan is not vatable.
It's not vatable. Okay, I hope that is clear, LG. Do all penalties apply or do all penalties apply to those organizations that are registered with CAC? Or is it that whether you're registered or not, you still get penalized?
Well, so I need to understand where the question is coming from. Is it from the tax angle or registration with CAC? But because from CAC point of view, there is like the previous speaker said, once you don't file for a number of time and you're registered with CAC, it becomes inactive. Inactive simply means you have not filed your returns. And if you did not file within the stipulated timeline and you're registered with CAC, you'll be penalized. For tax purposes too, even if you've not done anything at all, you're expected to file a statement of affairs with the tax authority. Pending the time we proceed and file a full financial statement. Though for FIRS, they've been able to relax that penalty because they've seen that you've not commenced business or commenced activity as the case may be. So the first year where you have grants, you have to bring the pre-corporation or pre-operational expenses into the year that you commence business and file everything as a one financial statement. With that, you've been able to cater for the statement of affairs that you did not file in the past. So sometimes some NGOs need a tax clearance certificate. That's why most times FIRS will tell you, go and file your statement of affairs. Without filing your statement of affairs, you will not get your tax clearance certificate. Otherwise, if you've not done anything, you can just pile up. But the best thing is file your statement of affairs. You do not know where this FIRS. Another challenge with consultants are facing with FIRS is no uniform policy, even when the law is clear on certain things. FIRS Ajah will adopt one, while FIRS Oshodi, tax office Ikeja, will adopt another one. So it depends on how you're able to argue your point when the case arises. But if you can, please file your statement of affairs to avoid stories. But if along the line you fail to do that, you can still file for the retrospective years without being penalized. It's very possible.
Thank you very much. Emmanuel would like to know the process for getting tax exemption certificate.
So for getting tax exemption certificates with FIRS, now, so what typically happens is there are two ways to it. In the past, FIRS issues tax exemption certificate status to NGOs. There will be like a letter and a certificate form. But now my conversation with FIRS, especially the heads of these tax incentive, they usually say that once you have your TCC, you are good to go. And the reason why they stop giving tax exemption certificate is because an NGO will come for a tax exemption certificate, and at the time of getting that tax exemption certificate, you will present your books that you are not doing any other thing other than the NGO activities for you to get the exemption certificate. After getting the exemption certificate, because most times it doesn't expire, after getting the exemption certificate, you will now be embarking on profitable activities and hiding under the exemption certificate you've collected in the past. They've seen instances like that such NGOs will come and say, I have my exemption certificate, I'm not liable to pay tax. Obviously, if you see that exemption status, you will come back and say, truly, they have they are not meant to pay tax. But they stop giving that tax exemption. Rather, they will grant you your TCC, but that does not stop you from being tax audited for other associated taxes.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. Mahfouz asked, are we expected to pay tax on grants?
No.
Okay, that's a clear one. All right, the next question. If an NGO is about 12 years now and they are still developing, but they have never received grants and are doing their best at the grassroots, this person would like to know, where do you start from to regulate your account in the area of tax and annual returns?
Okay, in the area of tax returns, let me start with that. If truly there has been no inflow from grants, you can combine your statement of affairs. So for example, as at the year end of 2022, you are still not sure, as at the end of this year, the grants you've not collected, the activities you've done for the past 12 years, there's a way you report your statement of affairs. You report the statement of affairs as at 31st December 2022. It means that you've catered for all the expenses you've been incurring right from inception, and you will file next year so that you meet up with the filing deadline. It's not advisable for you to file on year-by-year basis to FRS, especially when it is statement of affairs. You combine everything to a one statement of affairs and make it as at end of a financial period, which means that the expenses I've gathered over the years, I'll report it there. The salaries I've paid, if I've paid salaries, the research cost, I'll report it there and file with the tax authority. With that, you have the 90% chance of escaping returns. For CAC, I don't think it works that way, because for CAC, once you don't file within the stipulated timeline, I think I filed returns that I had to talk to a lawyer friend, and he requested that I do a yearly statement of affairs for those years for such company. So for CAC, it might be yearly. For for tax, where you've truly not gotten grants, you can combine everything and make it one statement of affairs and file with the tax authority and go and sin no more. Start complying from there.
Thank you very much. I do hope that the responses are clear enough. I'll move on to the next question, and I'll take two more as we round up. A UK-based organization has approached us on a social enterprise basis to market and sell their products while they donate the profits to us. We will be remitting their own portion to them. How do we go about this opportunity with tax authority? He says they have their TIN number, etc., and they have their tax records being currently updated.
So if you're marketing another company's products and you are getting reward for it, it is not within your scope as an NGO. My advice is, like I said earlier, you can notify CAC and also create like a segment reporting for such arm and pay the necessary tax. If you are making profit from such business, you have to pay tax on it. Otherwise, if FIS picks everything, you might start explaining that the whole inflow is a combination of donation and from the profit business. From the get-go, you have to prepare like another management account for such activity and pay the necessary tax on it. That's permissible by FIRS.
Okay, thank you very much. Chibundu is concerned about duplicity in all of this that we're discussing and wants to know, why should an NGO register with FIRS yet with the state IRS as well? Is that not duplicity?
Okay, there are different taxes collected.
Go ahead, please.
there are different taxes collectible by different arms of government or different tiers of government. FIRS has this list. State Board of Internal Revenue, they do have their own list. One of the key things that are collectible by FIRS that will not be collected by state is value-added tax. It is FIRS that has the sole responsibility to collect VAT. The states do not have that yet. There was a case in court, but as we speak now, it's still pending, and FIRS is still collecting VAT. So for states, the reason why you need to register with states is because if you want to pay the salaries of your employees, you need to register with the state where you reside to be able to pay the salary. You also need to register with the states where those employees reside in order to pay their salary so that they can get their tax card if need be. So for payment of salaries, for deduction of withholding tax on services rendered by business names, you are expected to register with the State Board of Internal Revenue. For value-added tax, for withholding tax, for income tax, and withholding tax collectible by rendered on transaction rendered with companies, you're expected to register with the FIRS. So different tiers of government has its own taxes and levies collectible. So also we have for local government.
Okay, thank you very much. The last question is from Ebun Lomo, and would like to know if the organization plows some of the surplus into buying equipment for rentals for sustainability. Is it VAT exempt or VATable?
Rentals of equipment. So please repeat it. They plow the profit for.
So the organization makes profit, they make surplus. Okay, since it's a non-profit organization, and then they plow that into buying equipment, which they now use for rental in a bid to, still be able to sustain their organization. Ebuloma would like to know if it is VATable.
It's VATable.
Okay, that's very simple. Amaka would like to clarify. You stated that taxes will not be paid if organization does not make an annual income of 25 million naira from those activities. Also that VAT is paid only on movable services. Does that then mean that VAT is not paid on co-working space? Since co-working space is not movable.
Yes, VAT, like I said, I have to correct it that VAT is not paid on co-working space. VAT is not paid on rent of immovable property. So VAT is not applicable on co-working space.
Okay. Michael asked, if an NGO established a school and school fees are being collected termly, the school pays staff pay only. Do they need to pay personal income tax?
You said the school pays payee staff only.
Yes.
Payee for the employees, personal income tax for the promoters, for the directors. Yes, they will have to, if that's what the question means. Or if the question is saying, would they have to pay income tax? We need to, but for personal income tax, you'll have to pay. That even both NGOs and profit making will have to pay personal income tax on based on direct assessment by the promoters of such business. So I think maybe the twist to that question can be NGO registers a school. You understand? The school fees generated if we be liable to income tax. Now, there is the Finance Act of this year actually removed school from exemption, provided. Now, the question we need to understand, how was the school set up? I can be an NGO and own a school, whereas the school is a limited liability company. You need to understand, was the school registered as an NGO? Was it registered under Part F? If it's registered under Part F, then such income will not be liable to income tax. But if the school is registered as a limited liability company but owned by the NGO, that school will pay the company's income tax. Just to put further perspective to that question, in case that's what the person is trying to ask.
Yeah, all right, thank you. Because the person actually followed up with that question: would they have to pay for the school income tax? And I think we have
exactly, just like I said, exactly.
Okay, I'll take one last question from Shegun Babalola, and he asked, what can organizations, community-based organization, for example, in the process of registration do to the withholding tax already deducted from vendors. They're in the process of registration. However, they have withheld some charges from their vendors.
I want to understand the question. Please repeat. Let me see if I can put perspective to it.
Okay. He says, what can organizations that are in the process of registration do to the withholding tax that they have already deducted from vendors? I assume they have been engaging vendors for services.
They've deducted withholding tax before registering with the FIRS.
Yes.
Obviously, at the point of registration, you remit those withholding tax and deem that they just occurred newly. But that's actually because if it has penalty, because once you deduct, the expectation is that you must remit within a certain timeline. But because you've not registered with tax office, now practically tax office starts recognizing you from the day you are registered. However, registration could be that you've been existing, you just only submitted your incorporation document to have for physical validation. Sometimes some organizations or NGOs register through the banks and get their TIN through banks. In that case, it is deemed that you've commenced business the moment you obtain your TIN, whether through bank, before you now physically submit at the tax office, or you never had TIN before, you are just registering. Now, if you don't have TIN before and are just registering, it also creates question, how are they paying you? Because there's no way you have a bank account these days without having a TIN. So if you have a TIN before, and FIS established that you have a TIN before, they might go back to the period where the transaction occurred and make you pay penalty for it because you are holding on to FIS money when you should have remitted. That's why there's penalty and interest. So if you've invested in that money, you should be able to cough out the portion that relates to FIS too.
Okay, thank you very much. This is where we'll have to stop for today because our time is fast spent. Thank you so much, Mr. Saheed, for your time. And I'm very sure that this was really insightful and the attendees learned a great deal from what we have discussed today. Thank you so much once again, Mr. Saheed. So if you could please type in the chat box one thing you're taking away from here today, please type in the chat box. And for those who have been requesting for the recording, we're going to post it on our YouTube page. Just go to YouTube and look for Aspire Coronation Trust Foundation, and you will find it there in the next few days. Thank you. Okay, so what is that one thing you have learned from today's seminar? We're waiting. I hope the chat box is not disabled. Okay. Shamsuddin says the need to include pensions for NGO staff, very essential. Yes. Someone has learned about tax exemption. Someone has also learned about the need to take permission from CAC to venture into anything that is beyond the scope for which you have been registered. All right, so it's 1 o'clock. We've been here since 10 a.m. That's quite some time. I want to really appreciate each and every one of us once again for making out time to be here. I do hope that you found value here and one or two things that you have learned from here, you will take it further to your organizations, either as the leader or you take it to your leader so that they can better manage your organizations. And on this note, I would like to say once again, thank you very much. Like we said, ACT Foundation is going to be 5 years this year. Our annual conference is coming up. We have dropped the link in the chat box. Please register so that you can participate online as well. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye, everyone.